Welcome to Fanfiction Audiobooks. Pirates of the Navy Thunder God. Chapter 21 Training Days. Although Zifa said the so-called targeted adjustment in a relieved tone, Ron still shuddered as he walked in the passage behind the fortress. He was not afraid that the special features of his body would be known by Garp and others. After all, this was the world of One Piece, and ordinary humans could grow to 3 or 4 meters tall, so it was not surprising that anything happened. However, one thing was beyond Ron's expectation. In the past, on Earth, his self-healing ability was not so fast. Ordinary scrapes and cuts were fine, but once it involved damage to the body, the recovery speed was only 10 days or half a month faster than that of ordinary people. But this time, even if his arm was burned, it still healed within one night. The only reason Ron could find for this was that as his physique strengthened, the mysterious energy used for self-healing in his body also increased, which led to his faster healing speed. There are always bad people trying to harm me. After the shiver, Ron stopped suspiciously and looked around like a thief, which attracted the patrol soldier to look at him carefully, and then he suddenly realized. Oh, it turns out to be this kid. The ordinary soldiers didn't know what happened last night, but they knew that Vice Admiral Garp was imprisoned with someone for breaking the rules. Marshal Sengoku announced this matter in his routine speech this morning, emphasizing discipline while also criticizing Garp. God knows what they were thinking when they heard that Garp was imprisoned. As a naval hero, Garp's influence is particularly terrifying in the headquarters of the Navy. Even Ron, who is just a newcomer, is remembered by many people. But, shouldn't he be in the cell? How did he get out? Did he escape? The patrolling soldiers immediately turned serious, looked at each other, and nodded. That person over there, yes, it's you, come here. Ron scratched the back of his head in surprise, and was about to move closer when someone suddenly called him. Ron, new recruit. Instructor Shiuzo asked you to report to the recruit camp immediately. What's going on? That was the colonel who was responsible for testing him yesterday. When he approached, he saw the patrol soldiers on high alert. He was stunned for a moment before he suddenly realized what had happened. Don't worry about it. He was pardoned by the marshal and released from prison. I see. The patrol breathed a sigh of relief. The colonel officer had been in charge of the recruit camp for many years, and several people in the patrol team had been trained under him. Since he had made such a promise, they could just check with the prison. He immediately nodded and saluted, and continued patrolling. After finishing all this, the colonel instructor patted Ron on the shoulder and said with a smile. Let's go. Don't let Instructor Shiuzo wait anxiously. Shiuzo. Ron suddenly woke up, he almost forgot about this matter. Yesterday he relied on the elementalization and lightning speed to defeat Shiuzo. The opponent would definitely not give up, but now he has to receive training under Shiuzo. What will be the result? Ron looked up at the sky, his mouth twitching in silence. This wave is going to be a failure again. After passing the test field, the two came to an open space in front of the main building of the recruit camp. At this time, the place was already crowded with people. New recruits were training on the vast playground under the guidance of their instructors. It can be seen that the recruit camp is indeed teaching students in accordance with their aptitude. Those who line up to run marathons are obviously not as strong as those who hit sandbags. Those who are good at kendo confront each other, chopping each other with unsharpened iron swords to hone their skills. A few devil fruit users were assigned to the other side of the open space, constantly releasing their fruit abilities, sweating profusely. Among them, there is an animal-type user who frequently switches between half-beast form and human form, which looks very funny. But even so, these people all have one thing in common. Even the most ordinary runners among them are full of energy. Because they can feel that they have become significantly stronger in these seemingly ordinary exercises. This is the day I want. Ron suppressed his excitement and followed the colonel into the building behind the playground, stopping in an open classroom without seats. Report. Instructor Xiuzhou, the new recruit Ron has been brought here. Well, thank you for your hard work. Xiuzhou turned his back to the two of them and nodded when he heard this. Team 7 is still short of one person to supervise the confrontation training. You go first. The colonel glanced at Ron and gave him a come-on look. Yes. After saying that, he walked away without looking back. Ron stayed where he was, swallowed dryly, and looked around, looking for an escape route. But at this moment, Xiuzhou, who had been observing him through his observation haki, said, "No need to look. The new barracks building is an important building of the Navy headquarters. Sea stone powder is mixed into the walls and iron door interlayers. Your lightning can't destroy it." Then Xiuzhou turned around, looked at Ron with a murderous look on his face and sneered, "And this glass is specially made, extremely hard, it can even withstand my fist." Gilu. Ha ha ha, what are you talking about, Instructor Xiuzhou? I don't understand. Humph. Stop playing dumb. Seeing Ron laughing, Xiuzhou immediately remembered the face he saw through the gap in the steel before he fainted yesterday, and he was so angry that his teeth itched. But soon, he sighed and waved his hand in a bored manner. Don't think too much, Ron, I'm not a petty person. I lost, there's nothing to complain about. The characteristic of soldiers is that they only look at the results and don't care about the process. Excuses and reasons are the most pale words in the army. Of course, as a brigadier general serving in the headquarters, being defeated by a newcomer, whose power is dozens of times lower than his own, is a hurdle that Xiuzhou will never be able to overcome in his life. He can only say that he doesn't care and doesn't think about it, but he can't let it go. Xiuzhou's expression didn't seem fake. This villain in the original novel, who only appeared in the movie version, had such a carefree attitude that Ron was a little dazed. Commander General Xiuzhou? Are you serious? Seeing Ron's confused look, Xiuzhou's eyelids twitched wildly, and he almost couldn't help but rush up to punch him. Fortunately, he knew his current status, and Zifa would tear him apart if he beat someone in private, so he immediately threw a form to Ron. Nonsense! Take this, get out of here! Seeing Xiuzhou's anger, Ron quickly picked up the form and slipped out. He didn't want to stay with this monster who could smash a 3-meter-thick iron ball with his fist. Noticing Ron's panic, Xiuzhou's expression changed. There is speechlessness, anger, and expectation. Recalling the way Zifa handed him the form wearing reading glasses last night, Xiuzhou lowered his head and said to himself, "Don't let the teacher down, Ron." As a teaching students in accordance with their aptitude recruit camp of the Navy headquarters, each recruit's course is different and not fixed, but will be gradually adjusted according to the actual situation. The form that Xiuzhou gave Ron was the training course schedule for him in the next few days. Marathon, weighted running, 100-meter sprint, push UPS, sit UPS, at a glance, it's all physical fitness enhancement training. A strong sense of being a sports school student. Ron made a pertinent comment on this. However, he also knew that compared with the native humans of the One Piece world, he was born from Earth with a weak constitution. Even if his body had special talents and amazing self-healing ability, it could not change the fact that he was a weak chicken. He followed the course on the form and came to the first position. The instructor immediately threw a bunch of weights at him. Veins popped out of his neck and he yelled, "You have 30 seconds to put them on, soldier. Then run." So fucking scary. Ron quickly put on the weight, and when the main marathon group passed by, he followed them. Chapter 22 The Terrifying Growth Rate. Remember, you losers. The fact that you can stand in this queue means that you are not as good as others. You are garbage. Stand up and keep running. Is your leg broken? Do you want me to help break it? The last one to fall behind. Are you going to clean the toilet or cut vegetables in the cafeteria? Have you decided? As the main force against pirates, the Navy has a very high casualty rate and has always believed in more sweat today, less blood tomorrow rather than living in an ivory tower. As a result, the training at the headquarters recruit camp can be described as hell, with the instructors in charge being more ferocious and louder than each other. After a morning of training, Ron was tired, but the damage to his eardrums made him speechless. Fortunately, the upcoming meal distracted him, and he happily followed the group to the cafeteria. Ron picked up his plate from the dining area and was about to line up when he suddenly discovered that the queue in front of him automatically dispersed, leaving a passage leading directly to the window. What's the situation? Ron was confused by this. He had forgotten about it, because of yesterday's dormitory bullying incident, coupled with the Vice Admiral Garp going to jail incident in the evening, which fermented overnight and throughout the morning. Now everyone in the recruit camp knows that there is a new monster among them. Just like the 3 legendary admirals, just like Smoker, the overlord of the new recruits camp a few years ago, Ron is also a natural devil fruit user. And his personality is extremely bad. All the staff of 301 and its surrounding dormitories and a dormitory manager who wished to remain anonymous said that they should never provoke him. The legend of the invincibility of the natural system in the early days of the Grand Line was well known to everyone, not to mention the Navy headquarters. Moreover, Ron was a dangerous thunderbolt, and the recruits did not want to experience the feeling of being electrocuted. So, seeing him coming, they decisively gave way to avoid the disaster. He found a familiar figure in the crowd. It was Zorro, who had taken his luggage to the ground earlier. Seeing his fearful expression, Ron suddenly realized what was going on. That's it, that's it. He had no time to deal with these passers-by, all he cared about was getting stronger. Since the road was cleared, he might as well take a shortcut. He walked up to the road without hesitation, and pointed at the plate in his hand in the suspicious eyes of the uncle serving the food. "Fill me up with this." "Okay, okay." The uncle who served the food was stunned for a moment, then he remembered his duty, took the plate decisively, and stuffed it full. Then Ron reached out his hand, crossed the plate, lifted up the large iron basin, and swaggered to find a seat to eat with the iron basin, leaving the uncle who served the food in confusion and the new recruits queuing behind him. "MMP. Ron. What are you doing?" At this moment, a loud shout attracted everyone's attention. Hearing the voice, Ron shrank his head, turned around and saw Shiuzo's angry look, and combined with his current behavior, he explained awkwardly. "Instructor Shiuzo, things are not what you think." The afternoon training continued, and Ron carried the weight and was the first to arrive at the designated area. The instructor in charge of this had been waiting for a long time, and without any nonsense, he just picked up the whistle. "Count to yourself, 300 push UPS, start." Chirp. With the shrill whistle, Ron's afternoon training began. 300 push UPS were not the end, but just a beginning. After finishing the first set, Ron got 5 minutes of rest time and then started the second set of 500. When the sun was setting and night fell, Ron, who had finished his dinner, staggered towards the dormitory. "Ah! I'm so tired. The Navy headquarters is so terrifying. What to say? It's worthy of teaching students in accordance with their aptitude." At the end of a day's training, all the items on the form were completed, just enough to drain every bit of Ron's energy. Even he himself could not estimate his physical limit, but it was easily seen through by outsiders. If Ron had not been full and replenished, he would have collapsed by now. This shows how much experience the Navy has in training new recruits. Compared with the general combat growth of pirates, this method is undoubtedly safer, more convenient, faster, and suitable for training a large number of personnel. The Navy headquarters recruit camp is worthy of its reputation. On the first day, Ron rarely did his daily self-harm exercises. He threw himself on the bed, his eyelids felt like they were filled with lead, and fell into a deep sleep. Time flies. 3 days later. In the evening, on the top of the new recruits' barracks building, Zifa held the documents with a twitching mouth and raised his head. Xiuzhou, do you think I'm stupid? I'd rather be stupid. Xiuzhou was thinking in confusion, and suddenly found that Zifa's eyes were unfriendly, and he quickly replied, Teacher, these data are recorded in real time, there is no falsification. Of course I know I didn't lie, otherwise you would be lying in the back garden now, would you believe it? Zifa replied unhappily, then picked up the information, his eyes filled with shock. This growth rate can't be wrong. It's the effect brought by that thing. In fact, few recruits know or pay attention to the fact that during their daily training, the instructor in charge of the current project will judge them, determine each person's growth progress, and finally summarize it and hand it over to Zifa. These data are the main factors in determining adjustments to recruit training programs. Logically speaking, it is impossible for a person to grow much in just 3 days. After Ron's data report came up, Xiuzhou subconsciously skipped it and prepared to put it into the file. But suddenly, he noticed the red mark below the file, which meant urgent change, and immediately pulled it out in shock. After reading it carefully, he immediately ran to Zifa's office and reported the information to him. Because in just 3 days, he adapted perfectly. And after the training, he still had at least 2 points of strength left. He was so tired before that he couldn't even get up, but today. Is he really a human? The training course set for the new recruits is aimed at draining every bit of their physical strength, and no one is exempted. Not to mention that Ron's training course was personally drawn up by Zifa. As a former general, Zifa's judgment will never be wrong. So if Zifa didn't make any mistakes, then the problem must be with Ron. Xiuzhou had seen geniuses before, but genius was an adjective used to describe humans. With such a growth rate and adaptability, was it certain that Ron was not some other creature with a human appearance? Maybe, right. Zifa didn't know how to explain this question. Decades ago, Marshal Kong kept the matter top secret, and in order to avoid further trouble, even the world government was unaware of it. After hesitating for a moment, Zifa asked, Where is Ron now? Is he back in the dormitory? Teacher, are you going to look for him? Xiuzhou was stunned for a moment, and replied, No, he has reserved his energy for today, so he will continue to use his training method of using lightning stimulation. In order to avoid affecting others, I left him in the training room. That self-harming exercise again. Hearing this term, Zephyr snorted coldly. Fortunately, Ron has a strong self-healing ability, otherwise he would have trained himself to death. That bastard Garp knew this but didn't stop him. It was about the emotional entanglement between two senior masters. Xiuzhou looked up at the sky, his eyes at his nose and his nose at his heart, pretending not to hear anything. Chapter 23, 1 month after Zifa accepted his apprenticeship. The training room is on the bottom floor of the recruit building, in a hidden space 10 meters underground. In this position, even if it collapses, it will not affect the ground at all. It is the first choice for many recruits to try new moves. It is open to all recruits. As long as you don't bury yourself stupidly, there will be no problem. When Zifa came to the training room where Ron was, he saw a bright human-shaped lightning. As a lightning man, as Ron becomes stronger, his resistance to lightning is getting stronger. No matter how actively he controls it, the natural elemental priority will destroy most of the damage, and only a small amount of current can stimulate the muscles. This means that he now has to increase the power to get the training effect. Seeing such a magical way of using it, Zifa, who thought he was knowledgeable, was also amazed. But he quickly remembered his purpose and spoke. Pause for a moment, Ron, I have something to ask you. Okay. ZZ. The lightning converged into his body. Looking at Zifa who entered the room, Ron stood up and said, Chief Instructor Zifa, why are you here? Even though Zifa spends most of his time guarding the recruit camp, he only appears in front of the recruits very rarely. Most of them can only see him once during the year-end evaluation. The highest officer they can meet at other times is Brigadier General Shuzo. I heard that you know a move that uses lightning to stimulate muscles for strengthening, so I came to take a look. Zifa pulled a small stool over, sat down, and lit a cigar. That's the trick you used just now, right? Tell me your idea. Really? Okay. Zifa's meaning is very clear, he wants to guide himself. Ron was overjoyed to receive guidance from Zephyr, a former admiral of the Navy and one of the world's top figures. He agreed and started to talk immediately. No matter why Zifa did this, or what his reasons were, he was the one who benefited, and Ron could not find any reason to refuse. After explaining the principle, Ron scratched the back of his head and said, "That's roughly the situation. As for the details, I'd better use it again." In response, Zifa bit his cigar and nodded without saying anything. Boom! After getting Zifa's approval, thunder roared. Thunders wrapped around his body, emitting dazzling blue light. Zifa took a puff of his cigar, released his observation haki, and sensed Ron's current state. Suddenly, his expression froze. This, except for some minor flaws, it's so perfect. He originally thought that Ron had developed this skill by relying on his special self-healing ability. As for the special nature of Ron's body, Ron didn't talk about it, and they wouldn't mention it either. It was enough for everyone to know it. Who among the truly powerful ones doesn't have some trump cards as ballast? So Zifa came here with the idea of giving guidance and correction, making Ron understand his mistakes, and then helping him correct them, and establishing his authority as a teacher. But what he didn't expect was that this skill was so compatible with the physique of the Thunder Man. The powerful current that was enough to burn an ordinary person into charcoal was weakened countless times due to the physical constitution of the Lightning Man, forming a perfect proportion with the strength of the body. Not only was it not dangerous, but it complemented each other. Moreover, the improvement of physical fitness will lead to an increase in the power of electric current, and the strengthened current can be repeatedly used in training to enhance physical fitness. Apart from the pain, this is a training method with no upper limit. The exclusive training method for users of the Thunder Fruit. Even if you don't have the same strong self-healing ability as Ron, you can still use this method to train. Ron pioneered the use of the Thunder Fruit, which is worthy of being recorded in history. What a monster! Zifa was stunned for a moment. Thinking about the past few decades, Ron was not the strongest recruit he had ever seen, but he was the most talented recruit he had ever seen. The Thunder Fruit user who disappeared hundreds of years ago only developed the lethality of lightning to the extreme, but Ron's creative ideas were incomparable. In addition, that thing opened Ron's Ren and Du meridians and activated his body's potential in advance. With this ability, and if he persists in training, in time, Zifa couldn't imagine what Ron would achieve. Thinking of this, Zifa's eyes became a little hot. Perhaps, it can not only make up for the gap of the Navy Admiral, but even reach the peak. No, don't be impatient. Ron is still a long way from here. Besides, some generals are strong and some are weak, like me now. With a self-deprecating smile, Zifa called out, "Come here Ron, I found some problems." "Okay, Chief Instructor Zifa. Call me Mr. Zifa." Swish! Ron's pace froze for a moment, then he bowed with joy, "Understood. Teacher Zifa." At the end of Kayan calendar 1514, the Navy headquarters and the new recruits camp. The sun shines in from the far east, and the cool sea breeze has a hint of warmth. The silent Navy headquarters becomes noisy again in the call of the rising sun, just as always, unchanging forever. As long as it works, leave the rest to me. I'll get Ron to cooperate, you. Bang! At this moment, a dull explosion sounded throughout the tall building, causing the Den Mushi to tremble involuntarily. Click, the phone was hung up. In the office, Zifa grinned and put down the microphone in silence. What is this little bastard developing again? In a special training ground in the basement of the new barracks building, muffled thunder continued to explode. Even with the best soundproofing materials, the dull explosions could still be heard in the corridor. The deafening explosions caused ashes to fall from the ceiling, and the passing soldiers quickened their pace with their dusty faces. That monster is getting more and more terrifying. The power of a nature-type devil fruit, what did you think? SHH, keep your voice down. Don't let him hear. Yes, let's go. A patrol of soldiers walked away quickly. In the training room, dazzling lightning flashed, leaving streaks of light in the air. On the walls, there were pits that were big enough to suffocate a person with trypophobia, and flying saucers were launched from them, with speeds not much slower than bullets. But the lightning kept jumping, and each time it could hit the flying saucer with extreme accuracy, with no more than 1% of the miss. After a long time, the lights in the training room turned red, and a pleasant female voice sounded, indicating the end. Training is over, hit rate is 98.5%. A hit rate of 98.5% is the second highest after those old monsters after Vegapunk invented this tester. It is also unique among these recruits. ZZ. The lightning that had been shooting continuously before stopped in the center of the venue. Ron was shirtless and gasping for breath. Did we miss a few? Ron himself was not satisfied with the data, which was unimaginable to others. He is the user of the Thunder Fruit, and has a huge innate advantage. Whether it is speed or lethality, it is not comparable to ordinary people. With such a huge advantage but unable to score full marks, Ron knows that he still has a long way to go. Boom! Clenching his fists, a lightning column formed naturally, making a deafening explosion. Electricity was wrapped around Ron's body, and cloud-like spots of light appeared on his body, flashing through his skin. His eyes were deep blue, emitting strong light, making him look like an imaginary being from mythology, not a real living person. Finally, I have perfected this form. Looking at his hands and feeling the vast power in his body like the ocean, Ron grinned with a satisfied smile. Thanks to the book Friend from the Abyss, invitation for the 500 reward. Abyss? No appointment. The Abyss ruins a life, strengthens 3 generations of poverty. If you are not strong and not in the Abyss, you will become tall, rich, and handsome. Chapter 24 Overload Form Year-End Review. Overload Mode, 10 million volts. This move was inspired by the self-harm training method he used daily, and can be said to be an extension of the former. The self-harm training method, now officially named Lightning Stimulation Method, uses the ability user's autonomous consciousness to control the elementalization of the body, using electric current to cause pain and stimulate the muscles and bones, thereby achieving the effect of training. The so-called overload form is to incorporate a larger current on this basis, turning it from a simple training move into an explosive move to assist in the attack. The meaning of overload is very easy to understand: overload, exceeding the prescribed carrying standards. This is how the overload principle of the Lightning Man works. His body has a standard limit, which is the maximum volt he can use. Using the current within the limit on himself is called lightning stimulation, and using it outside the limit is considered an overload. The body is filled with electric current, and lightning that exceeds the body's capacity is locked and circulated inside the body, thereby enhancing its power for attack and release. The state in which this process continues is the overload state. The overload lightning fist from a month ago was enhanced by overload, allowing him to deliver an explosive punch far beyond his physical limit. The power of that move was judged by Zifa to have a full 500 Dao power, which was 10 times his physical Dao power at the time. After more than a month of careful guidance from Zifa, Ron's physical fitness has doubled. Now he can not only control the overload lightning fist, which previously could not control the direction of attack, could only go straight, and could only perform local overload. Then on this basis, a whole body overload state was derived. This is something that only Ron, the inventor of the lightning stimulation method, can do. Even if ordinary people also hold the thunder fruit, they cannot endure that kind of pain and cannot produce that kind of talent. In the full body overload mode, Ron's physical fitness and lightning power will be greatly enhanced. Even if he can only perfectly control 500 million volts now, even if he doesn't use the power of the fruit, every punch and kick of his will not be weaker than Deo force. After all, overload mode 10 million volts means that on the basis of the existing 30 million volts, the current is overloaded by 10 million volts, which brings an overall increase. But, the price is very heavy. Just like equipment overload, depending on the overload limit and duration, it can cause damage to the body. In severe cases, the equipment can be burned, causing the body to shut down and become unable to mobilize any lightning. For example, his current limit overload is 30 million volts. If it weren't for his amazing self-healing ability and the forest in his heart, Ron would have used this move desperately instead of using it as a regular ability. The overload form is powerful enough, but it cannot be transformed into an element. It kills 1,000 enemies but loses 800 of its own. Its practical significance is more closely related to the strength of the physique. Picking up the kettle and drinking water, Ron thought silently. And the overload lightning fist is just me imitating Kizaru's light speed kick but failed. I gave up the currently uncontrollable high speed of lightning, forced the overload current, and used my body to deliver an explosive punch with the lethality of lightning. This is a tricky way. The focus in the future should still be on developing the ability of the fruit. First, set a small goal to develop an ordinary lightning fist that uses the speed and lethality of lightning as the premise. It is less powerful, but more practical. The conversion speed is not enough, so there is no way to solve this problem. Simply shooting a lightning fist is not as good as discharging electricity, bang. Just as he was thinking about it, the door of the training room was suddenly kicked open. Shiuzo stood outside the door and shouted angrily, "Ron! Do you know what day it is today?" Ron was startled and shrank his neck, turning back and grinning, "Ha, ha, ha! Of course I know! What day is it, brother? Stop trying to get close to me! Now, immediately, right now! Go back and gather!" Yes. The Navy headquarters holds a very important event every year. Most of the naval generals who have no missions on duty will come to watch the ceremony. And when the Japanese fortress is open to the civilians on the island, they can come in and understand the power and momentum of the new generation of the Navy. The scene is quite lively. This activity is the annual year-end evaluation of the Navy headquarters recruit camp. When Ron ran back to the team and stood in line, the first batch of soldiers for evaluation were ready to go on stage. Wow, it's spectacular! This is a huge square behind the bay port of the Navy headquarters that can accommodate 100,000 people. Looking around, there are so many people that you can't see the end at a glance. The empty square has been built into a high platform with the efforts of the soldiers. At the top sits the Admiral of the Navy headquarters, Buddha Sengoku. Slightly lower than him sit the two admirals of the Navy headquarters, Akainu and Kizaru. Aokiji did not participate in the ceremony because he was on a mission. And below that are the seats for the vice admirals of the headquarters. With the headquarters bosses as the forehand, wooden seats extended to both sides, forming a circular high wall similar to the Roman Colosseum, more than 30 meters high. Navy families and officers of all levels living in the small town of Marineford gathered together, watching the performance while cheering for the recruits they knew. Suddenly, Kizaru raised his eyebrows, looked at the slightly chaotic group of recruits at the entrance, and laughed obscenely, "Ah! I thought that little guy was dragged to Hell Island by Teacher Zifa for training, but I didn't expect him to be still in the headquarters." Because of what happened that night, Ron was put on probation. For the past month, he has been training in the recruit camp without any contact with the outside world. Kizaru would naturally not be so idle to ask about him. So far, he has not seen him for a month. Is that the one? The user of the thunder fruit. Akainu was sitting next to Kizaru. He had not originally planned to come and watch the ceremony, but when he thought about Ron's appearance this time, he temporarily put down his work and came to watch. I hope he lives up to the name of the thunder fruit. Akainu never thought that his lava fruit was weak, and he proved the power of the lava fruit with his actual actions. But after Ron appeared, rumors such as the strongest natural system and invincible fruit spread in the headquarters, and even if you don't care, you can always hear them. A great admiral would not get angry with a newcomer, but wanted to come and see whether Ron was worthy of the Navy's focused training. Then don't be startled, Akainu. Kizaru spoke slowly, looking at Garp who was covered in black air below, with a hint of ridicule on his lips. It's not just the thunder fruit that's scary, but also the new soldier named Ron. Seeing Ron enter, Cap, who had been released today after being imprisoned for a month, bit the donut viciously and gave him a murderous look. This little bastard has gotten a lot stronger. Ron. Why is he here? SHH, nonsense. He's a new recruit too. Seeing Ron standing in the queue, the others looked at him in surprise. Because of his rapid growth, those who knew about it were all astonished. So in order to avoid dampening the enthusiasm of the other recruits, Luo Xiu did not do physical training with them in the playground for more than half a month. For the rest of the time, Zifa gave him freedom and let him practice on his own, only providing him with help and guidance when necessary. In the recruit camp, this is a treatment only a very few geniuses can enjoy. It is unique in this session. No questions to ask. In addition, Ron rarely went out, and often stayed in the training room for 3 to 5 days during training, so that in the second half of the month many recruits did not know where Ron was, and even the possibility of him going out to sea to perform missions was revealed. Now seeing Ron return to the ranks of new recruits, they were naturally very surprised. After Ron returned to the team, Xiu Zhou trotted over to Zifa, saluted, and said, "Chief Instructor Zifa, all members of the new recruits have assembled. Please give your instructions. One day, I'm going to tear him apart." The recruits' year-end evaluation almost made a fool of itself because of Ron. Zifa's face turned black, but considering that now was not the time to worry about it, he glanced at the recruits stretching their arms and legs and waved his hand. "Let's get started." Yes. The above content is purely fictitious, if there is any similarity. None of my business. Okay, let's talk about how to prevent arguments. The overload form is a result of Daki's wild imagination. After all, this is the world of One Piece. Don't worry about whether it's scientific or not. What exists is reasonable. Chapter 25 Evaluation begins. General's estimates. Oh. Is it about to start? Go ahead, the Quinn family never admit defeat. Come on, son. As the tall instructor wearing a cloak of justice stepped onto the wide platform in the middle, the entire Colosseum suddenly became boiling. Since the focus was on the evaluation, there were not so many formalities. After getting a nod from Zhang Guo, the colonel instructor immediately raised the flag in his hand. The Navy Headquarters 1514 New Recruit Camp Year-End Evaluation begins. Team 1. Step out. With the instructor's heart-wrenching shouts, the recruits who had been doing warm-up exercises lined up neatly and stepped onto the platform with their heads held high. Each of them stood straight, like a proud rooster. In the eyes of officers at all levels, the recruits with an average power of less than 500 were very weak. Facing the vast ocean, they would not be able to make a single wave. But that unstoppable momentum should not be underestimated. Even Sengoku, who was troubled by the gap in the Navy's peak strength, couldn't help but smile after seeing them. As long as fresh blood continues to be replenished, the Navy will still be the Navy that suppresses the sea. Soon, with a whistle, the year-end evaluation of the recruit camp officially began. The first is the simplest test, the attack power value. Clang! A sound of sword echoed in the air, and the first person in the first row drew his sword, took a deep breath, and then rushed forward fiercely under the gaze of countless people. In front of him, there was a force test machine designed by Vegapunk. Each one looked like an iron door, towering and huge. Behind the test machine was a display screen, which could accurately display the force value unless the attack could penetrate the iron door. Of course, the upper limit of the test machine made for the recruits would not be too exaggerated. The test limit of 3000 force value was enough for Shuzo to easily blow up the enemy. Ron knew the man who attacked first, Quin Dante, the son of Major General Quin Master. As one of the few swordsmanship masters among the new recruits, holding a good and sharp sword, he has vaguely reached the realm of sword energy breaking through the air. Even if he is not a threat to him now, once he masters the armed color domineering, he will be an opponent that Ron cannot underestimate. Even if he holds the thunder fruit, Ron never thinks that he is invincible in the new recruit camp. Because he understands that the so-called invincibility is relative to the environment and opponents. For example, Zoro, after being defeated by Ron, he has gone from being a top 100 student to being just an ordinary person. This is a negative example. Even though he was invincible in the boot camp, he might not last even a month in Hell Island. Boom! The swordsman rushed forward and slashed down with his sword, smashing the good and fast sword hard on the gate, making a loud noise. The crowd around him moved slightly, but immediately restrained themselves. After checking, the corresponding instructor raised the flag, announced that the results were valid, and then read them out loud. Quin Dante, Deo Power, 550. Wow! The crowd then began to boil, and the noise was endless. 550 Deo Power. The little brats in the Quin family are getting more and more outstanding. Major General Quin, you have to treat us tonight. No, he's still far from it, ha ha ha. 550 Deo Power is not a small number. It can be said to be an extremely scary number among the new recruits. You should know that Zoro, one of the top 300 recruits, only has Deo Power. Quin Dante's result is enough to rank in the top 10 in this session. It was obvious that Zifa had deliberately arranged him to be the first one to go up in order to liven up the atmosphere. I made a breakthrough? Ha 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 ha. Father, did you see that? The test data made the swordsman very happy. He didn't expect that he could burst out on the spot and exert 550 Deo Power. So he raised his sharp sword to signal his family, and then he was immediately kicked off the stage by the instructor and ordered to put away his weapon and return to the team. As a soldier, are you tired of drawing your sword against your own people in front of marshals and generals? Amid the laughter of the crowd, Major General Quin, who was so happy just now, suddenly twitched his mouth and thought about how to teach this son who embarrassed him a lesson when he got home. Afterwards, the new recruits went up for the test one after another. As the headquarters new recruit camp, there are only geniuses and strong people here. Even graduates from the Naval Academy may not be able to join the headquarters recruit camp and receive training under former Admiral Zifa. When Ron joined more than a month ago, his physical data was tested to be 50 times stronger than that of an ordinary person, but he was almost labeled as unqualified. Therefore, at this moment, the Deo Power value generated by any soldier is no less than 3 digits, and the powerful ones can even reach around 300 to 500, which is magnificent and spectacular. Soon, as the teams of new recruits finished their tests, Ron's team finally came to the front. Seeing this, Kizaru narrowed his eyes slightly and said to Akainu with interest, "General Akainu, how much power can that kid attack?" Ron's talent in the Thunder Fruit is unquestionable. A month ago, he could attack 228 4.5 times his own power. Later, rumors spread in the new recruit camp that Ron's growth rate was simply inhuman. Now a month has passed, and no one knows how strong Ron is. However, as they are all natural system, they can estimate a rough number based on their own growth rate. Akainu thought seriously about this, and after a moment he said, 400. No, 500 to start, 1000 or less. Oh? You really think highly of him, Admiral Akainu? Kizaru glanced at Akainu in astonishment. 500 compared to 228, doesn't this number mean that Ron's performance has doubled in at least 1 month, and that's something none of the 3 of them could do? Not to mention the upper limit is as high as 1000. Humph! Don't forget the lightning stimulation method he developed. Akainu snorted. Even though he was unwilling, he had to admit Ron's terrifying talent. After Chief Instructor Zifa sent the information, Vegapunk has been working hard to study it. He promised that once it is completed, the strength of the Navy soldiers will be greatly improved. As developers, we don't have that convenience, but it doesn't mean he can't do it either. Hearing this, Kizaru took a deep breath and said in a hissing tone, I was wondering why the development progress of Pacifist has stopped recently. It turns out that he is busy with that. Before he could finish his words, Kizaru suddenly felt a murderous aura enveloping him. His eyelids twitched wildly and he changed his words. Ha ha ha, let's look forward to his performance. Seeing this, Sengoku snorted coldly and reminded casually, as the commander of the scientific forces, you must take responsibility, Kizaru. The 5 elders value pacifists very much. As a naval marshal loyal to the world government, Sengoku initially disagreed with Zephyr's proposal. The reason was simple: doing other things during the critical period of the pacifists' development, even if it was just a sign, the 5 elders would definitely not sit idly by. Fortunately, Vegapunk replied that this thing could be popularized, the Navy could use it, and government agencies could use it, and the benefits outweighed the disadvantages, so Sengoku finally decided to report it. Ha 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 ha, I understand. No one noticed the incident in the stands except the Navy leaders who were closer. They were all looking at the boy who was walking slowly towards the test machine, with different expressions in their eyes. Is that him? The user of the legendary Thunder Fruit? Look! Ron's up there. It looks pretty solid, so it should be quite strong. Tisk, I heard that his first test score was only 50 Dao power, he almost failed. No way? Is he that weak? A force of 50 is beyond the scope of ordinary people in this world, but in the new recruit camp of this headquarters, it cannot be explained by the word weak. In just 1 month, couldn't he only be able to produce 100 Dao powers? It's possible. Even if someone has the ability of the Thunder Fruit, they may not be invincible. At once, everyone cast their eyes at him, with different expressions. Especially some guys who couldn't stand others doing well, they secretly laughed in their hearts, waiting for Ron to make a fool of himself. Due to the closed training in the recruit camp, except for the top leaders who had the right to ask, the rest of the people didn't know what was going on. If Ron's roommates knew what they were thinking, they would definitely touch their aching bodies and swear with innocent faces. The first test of Ron's physical fitness was indeed 50 Daoli, which was a black spot that Ron could never wash away in his life, but his talent in lightning was 228. At his growth rate, who knows what this monster will become in a month. In order to prevent Shuzo from losing his dignity in front of the new recruits, Zifa did not announce his defeat. However, the talent that Ron showed in his daily training was so terrifying that it shocked the new recruits. Chapter 26 Overload Secret 8 Dragons Holding the Pearl. The instructor who gave the order happened to be an acquaintance, the colonel who was in charge of Ron's first day of testing. When he saw Ron coming on stage, he suddenly remembered something and reached out to stop the other recruits. Wait a moment, wait until he finishes the test before going up. What? The remaining recruits stared at each other in bewilderment, not knowing what to do. However, facing the instructor, they did not dare to question him, and retreated from the platform with a lot of doubts. This scene made Kizaru's eyelids twitch in the stands, and he said, Hey, do you have to be so scary? It's only been over a month. As a student of the Department of Natural Science, he naturally knew why the colonel instructor did this. If you ask others what the most obvious feature of the nature system is, 9 out of 10 people will answer, elementalization. Indeed, the special ability that ignores all physical attacks and can only hit entities with armed color domineering is the basis for the nature system to be called the strongest fruit. But in addition, excluding the ability of elementalization, what is left? The answer is attack range. The most powerful offensive ability of the nature system is not the lethality of the element, but the boundlessness of a natural disaster once it is used. Every move can launch an unavoidable, covering attack that makes ordinary people despair. Just like what Aokiji showed in the original work, freezing the sea and creating an ice channel connecting two islands that lasted for a week without melting, that kind of coverage area can no longer be described simply as vast. It is exactly in line with the phrase, overwhelming. So the answer is obvious. Considering that Ron is not one of the 3 admirals and does not have such precise control, and the uncontrollable and destructive power of lightning, the instructor was afraid that he would not be able to control the scope of the impact when he burst out with all his strength and hurt the other soldiers. Therefore, the instructor asked others to wait for a while and wait until he finished the test before going on stage. But I remember that it was half a year later that we were given the honor of taking the test on stage alone, right? Kizaru smacked his lips and sighed, it's really, so scary, so scary. Lightning is easy to spread. Maybe Chief Instructor Zifa took this into consideration and let him go on stage alone. Akainu was unsure and made such a guess. Kizaru neither agreed nor denied it. He looked at the muscular figure standing on the stage and touched his chin, is that so? In the stands, the colonel waited for the rest of the soldiers to retreat to a safe location before signaling to Ron, new recruit, you can start. Look at the position he is standing in. He is ready to run away at any time if something goes wrong. Ron. I always feel like I'm being treated as a dangerous person. Can you be a little more confident in me? At this time, seeing Ron standing there in a daze, Zifa spitted with twitching mouth, what are you doing? Come down quickly. Ah, yes. During this month, Ron personally understood how kind Zifa was to his disciples. Now seeing him angry, he quickly became serious and electric current wrapped around his body. Thunder exploded for a moment, and the invisible oppressive atmosphere grabbed everyone's heart like a devil's claw, making people hold their breath and concentrate. Blue light flashed in the air, thunder rumbled, and vibrated the eardrums. Oh! Is this the thunder fruit? What a terrifying aura! That's right. Even if the first test only has 50 Dao power, judging from the current performance, it is definitely more than 100 Dao power. Just as the others were looking forward to Ron, suddenly, a bolt of lightning as thick as a bucket shot up into the sky. The lightning was bright and dazzling, but the next second, the bright lightning suddenly disappeared, leaving only Ron standing on a charred platform, moving his hands and feet. The civilians who were a little further away stared at this scene in a daze, and asked in confusion, what happened? Is his test over? Could it be that the ability failed? No, it didn't. An officer who possessed the observation haki had a solemn expression on his face. He looked at Ron, who was emitting an extremely strong and dangerous aura from head to toe in the center of the venue, and spoke calmly. He's just warming up. Is that so? The man who asked the question shrugged and was about to say something when he suddenly felt that the atmosphere was not right. He looked up and saw that the entire viewing platform was in a dead silence. Even a pin drop could be heard. The admirals who had mastered the observation haki frowned and looked at Ron. Influenced by them, the surrounding civilians fell silent and also cast their eyes on Ron. In the end, what happened? Ordinary people were definitely not as good as naval officers. They could smell the strong threat of death from Ron and knew that Ron had changed from a small figure that they could just ignore to a beast that would eat anyone it wanted. In their eyes, Ron just had some spots on his skin, which made him look a little weird. In response to this, Zifa, as Ron's teacher, laughed with great relief. Are you finally done? Ron, then go ahead. Tell them that only monsters come out of our new recruit camp. Overload mode, 30 million volts. Ron's appearance was the same as if he had been overloaded with 10 million volts, but if you looked closely, you would find that there were no pupils in his eyes, and his whole body had turned into a bright ball of light. In the air around him, strands of electricity emerged out of thin air, making a piercing noise, and lightning the size of a hair could create charred cracks when it fell on the ground. Cluck, cluck. Moving his fingers carelessly, Ron muttered to himself, half an hour of healing time, 15 minutes of being unable to mobilize lightning, and all my physical strength is exhausted. I pay such a huge price, I wonder how much power I can produce. Now he can only perfectly control the overload form of 10 million volts, instead of just 10 million volts. In order to test his own limits, Ron directly used the strongest overload. Click! Click! Slowly raising his arms, the silver snakes flew around uncontrollably, and the high temperature of lightning and thunder made the air explode continuously. Savoring the familiar smell of ozone, Ron closed his fingers one by one and bowed his fist. Giloo! At some point, everyone on the viewing platform had their eyes fixed on Ron, unable to look away. Staring at him was like staring into the abyss, with an inexplicable attraction that chilled people to the core. Swallowing hard, the civilians stared intently, waiting for the test. Immediately. Zzz. Dazzling lightning gathered on the fist, crackling and exploding. But they were not simply condensed, but 8 curved lightning pillars that kept circling around the arm. Soon, from the pure white and round light pillars at the beginning, those lightnings turned into dragons with clear scales and horns. Each lightning was a little dragon. Boom! Suddenly, the lightning bolts burst out uncontrollably, waving in the air, causing chaos in the viewing platform. However, before the lightning bolts fell, an inexplicable gravitational force attracted them all back. Everyone looked back and saw that it was Ron. These lightnings were not external forces that could be wasted at will, but were released by Ron to accumulate power. He could not control this move perfectly now, and at this moment all his energy was put into controlling the lightning on his fist, so he could only resort to this last resort. With the help of lightning, the dragon on his fist expanded rapidly, and in the blink of an eye, it turned into a huge monster over 10 meters long, flashing with surging lightning. Guarding on both sides. This move has a nice name, called. Ron looked up and grinned. Then he took a step, turned into thunder, and suddenly punched out. Overload form secret 8 dragons holding pearls. Under the gaze of the outside world, 8 thunder dragons flew up and down around Ron, chasing the fist that turned into a ball of light. The roars and long moans were endless, leaving beautiful but deadly lightning tassels in the air, and then fiercely hit the test machine. With a deafening explosion, an invisible surge erupted, blowing everything around away. Then, the 8 thunder dragons came one after another, and the dazzling thunder emitted strong light and exploded with a roar. For a moment, even people on the other side of the island heard a deafening explosion. Boom! Chapter 27 Confrontation Test. Many people believe that among the 3 types of devil fruits, the natural type is called natural type because the power they represent can be found in nature, so it is named natural type. Actually, it is not. Through Zifa's explanation, Ron learned that the real reason why the natural type is called natural type is that they are like nature and represent the vast power of nature. Because of the fear and awe of nature, the devil fruits that control these powers are named natural types. Just like now, the move Ron performed had a dramatic name, 8 dragons holding pearls, which once again aroused mankind's awe of nature. Thunder roared loudly, and nothing could be heard except a buzzing sound. The dazzling lightning covered the sky, and there was only a flash of lightning as far as the eye could see. Occasionally, a flash of lightning would burst out and hit the face, causing stinging pain, letting people know that they were still alive. In the stands, Zhangguo held down his hat that was about to be blown away, and sighed with mixed feelings. I finally understand why Zifa asked me to increase the distance between the audience stand and the test stand. If the distance is not increased, Ron's move will involve everyone around him, and the consequences will be very serious. Unlike now, the instructors in the recruit camp acted in unison and quickly blocked the lightning. The lightning didn't last long, disappearing after a few seconds. But in the stands, a group of ordinary people were gasping for breath, staring at the calmed-down test bench, as if they were in another world. The new recruits in Ron's team were even more miserable, and they all collapsed on the ground, accepting Zifa's protection. When they thought about how they had almost been in such a terrifying thunderstorm, their hearts beat faster in fear. Weird, monster. After an unknown amount of time, someone finally spoke in a dry voice and said this. Hearing this, the people around him nodded and cast admiring glances at Ron. This is the world of One Piece, a world where the strong are respected. No matter how badly Ron did in the first test, he is now a strong man. Deserve everyone's respect. Only. Well. Seeing Ron fall down along with the smoking test machine, the crowd's cheers got stuck in their throats. They looked around and stared at each other helplessly. They were about to cheer, but the protagonist fell down, which was quite embarrassing. Carry him away. You, check the results. Yes. Zifa was prepared for this. With a command, someone immediately went up to carry Ron, the salted fish with black smoke coming out of his mouth, to the rear. There was plenty of food prepared for him there, and the quantity was large enough to fill him up. With Ron's special physique, this injury was not a big deal. Then, the colonel summoned his not-so-proficient armament haki, lifted up the flashing test machine, and looked down. The instructor in charge of counting looked at the number in horror, his eyes wide open. It was not until the colonel glared at him impatiently that he swallowed and raised the flag. The results are valid. New recruit Ron, your Deo power value. Gilu. After swallowing hard again, the instructor shouted at the top of his lungs, 2700. Boom. The colonel, whose hands and feet were paralyzed, threw away the nearly scrapped test machine. The sound it made was like an explosive, detonating the atmosphere on the scene. What? 2700. Incredible. It's incredible. 2700 Deo force. This kind of power is about the same as the colonel of the headquarters, right? More than that. It's enough for Sahai to be a major general. Although the officers who were able to stay in Marineford had the same position as the officers of the Four Seas and the various branches of the Grand Line, their strength was definitely different. For example, Shizo's 4000 Dri was enough to serve as a base commander in any branch of the Grand Line, which was a lieutenant general position. In the headquarters, even if there were no mistakes made in the past, he would at most be a major general. The reason for this situation, after all, is the difference in strength between the opponents. The highest position of the base chief of the Four Seas branch is Major General, and the general position is Colonel. However, due to the weak Four Seas, ordinary people without strength can take the position as long as they have the ability and military merit. Because the enemies they have to face are very different from those in the Grand Line, the Navy's strong ships and powerful guns are not vegetarian, and the army is overwhelming and crushing. But in the Grand Line, why don't you try to put a person without any ability in a high position? He will be killed by pirates as a sacrifice the next day. As the last gateway to the New World adjacent to the Sabayati archipelago, with the Holy Land of Marijoa, the fortress of Impel Down, and Judicial Island standing behind it, the enemies that the headquarters navy will face are those who have made it through the first half of the Grand Line, and those overlords who commit crimes in the New World. Therefore, it is natural that the requirements for the officer's strength are very strict. This is also the fundamental reason why the officers of this unit are so superior to others in the world. However, after hearing this, someone quickly refuted it. No, I think it's still underestimated. Ron is a thunderbolt. With the same power value, his lethality is more terrifying than fists, feet, and swords. Not only is his speed fast, but he also has the advantages of distance and coverage area. Although he will be seriously injured by this move, most of the pirates in the Four Seas and even the Grand Line can't withstand it. After all, it's thunder and lightning. The lethality to the human body is too great. Hiss. In other words, just based on this move, Ron is already qualified to serve in the Grand Line. I think it's okay. This is terrible. Another monster has appeared in the Navy. Ron. 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 On this day, someone finally continued the monster legend left by the three admirals decades ago. That was Ron, a new recruit who had joined the Navy for more than a month. Looking at the cheers in the stands, with everyone shouting the same name in unison, like the tide and the sea, Jean Guo was very pleased. Yeah, not bad. Not bad. Ha 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 ha. A little lower than him, Akainu and Kizaru stared ahead in amazement. After a long while, Kizaru twitched his lips and said teasingly, "What did you say just now? At most 1,000. Akainu opened his mouth, looking a little embarrassed. But he quickly adjusted himself and took a deep breath. Amazing. In just 1 month, your strength has grown so fast. You're really a monster. I thought I should have made a bet with you just now. What a pity." Kizaru added regretfully, earning Akainu's unhappy look. It only took 1 month to increase the maximum burst of Dao force from 500 to 2,700. This achievement not only represents strength, but also the terrifying and astonishing talent. He has grown to this level in just over a month. It is conceivable that if he is given time, Ron will grow into such a terrifying monster in the future. The only thing that made the recruits feel fortunate was that Ron's overall evaluation was still within the acceptable range for everyone. The terrifying lethality of lightning and the special blessing of the overload form, plus the Thunder Fist derivative, 8 dragons holding a pearl and the combined power of 8 thunder dragons, the score was 2,700, but his physical fitness was only 700 after comprehensive testing. Isn't 700 high? Very high. Among this year's recruits, except for the monsters who received extra training on Hell Island, Ron ranked first. But compared with his sky-high attack power value of 2,700, the main body's power of 700 is not so exaggerated. However, this is still a terrifying number that no one in the recruit camp can break. Coupled with his terrifying growth rate, it is difficult for ordinary people to even see his back. The gap will only get bigger and bigger as time goes by, until most people despair. But the soldiers of the Marine Headquarters' new recruit camp were not the kind to give up so easily. In the following tests, they gritted their teeth, unleashed their strongest moves, and reignited the atmosphere. It's true that Ron is a monster, but these little guys are also the backbone of the future Navy. For a moment, the atmosphere at the scene was very high and cheers of encouragement were heard everywhere. After waiting for the preliminary test to be over, it was time for lunch, and everyone reluctantly went to find food. The recruits had a rare day off, so those with family and friends gathered together and went to the town to have a good meal. As the most lively event of the Navy every year, the individual test in the morning is just the beginning. In the afternoon, there will be more intense confrontation training. It is also the best stage for recruits to rank and compete for the future. It can be said that all the previous generals of this headquarters have shined in confrontation training. The veterans from 50 or 60 years ago, Garp, Sengoku, and Zephyr, the representative of the vice admirals of the headquarters 30 years ago, Flying Squirrel, and Zephyr's right-hand man Shisa from the rookie camp, the current 3 admirals from 20 years ago, Aokiji, Kizaru, Akainu, and so on and so forth. As long as you can read out the names, they are all there without exception. While everyone was heatedly discussing the performance of the outstanding people this morning, in a corner of the headquarters fortress, Kizaru took out a Den Den Mushi, Moshi Moshi, Mr. Vegapunk, what's going on? Ah, that's not urgent. You should pay more attention to the pacifists. Marshal Sengoku got angry today. What? He wants me to draw blood again? Can't you be considerate of an old man like me? At the same time, in the headquarters hospital near the square, Ron tore off the bandages on his body, picked up the rice bowl and ate heartily under the doctor's skeptical gaze. It is what we call equal exchange. The energy to restore the body and heal injuries does not come out of thin air. You must replenish the energy you consume. After the tedious tests in the morning, he was already starving. Now that he is sure that his body is fine, he just wants to eat him to death. Zifa stood by with a smile on his face. Seeing Ron so energetic, he felt relieved. Eat slowly, Ron. There is plenty of food. Hey? What did you say? Ah. Click. Zifar wrinkled his forehead, his eyelids twitched rapidly, and he rapped his fist with armed color domineering, Duan. Swallow it before you speak. After a month, Zifa felt that despite his age, his armament haki had improved a lot. But he was a little irritated recently, his urine was yellow. I heard that getting angry damages the liver and shortens your life, so you can't get angry. Ron deeply suspected that the food in his mouth was not swallowed, but was punched away by Zifa. It really is, it hurts so much. However, Zifa couldn't be provoked in this state, so he stood up and said, Teacher Zifa, do I have to skip the confrontation training this afternoon? With his current strength, there is no opponent in the recruit camp. In the class of the three generals, the three of them fought against each other. In the class of Smoker, there was also Black Threshold Tina who was his rival. But now, who should Ron call? Is it the top 100 recruits Zoro who was subdued as soon as he entered the field? Or is it Quinn Dante, the talented swordsman that the Quinn family finally produced? It's not necessary at all. Unexpectedly, upon hearing this, Zifa immediately laughed and said, Go, why not? Such a great stage, why not go? The world is focusing on you. Don't worry, I have arranged everything. At this moment, Zifa's smile was like some mysterious oriental power, giving Ron a bad feeling. Chapter 28 The General returns to fight against Shuzo. Naval Headquarters, 1:30 p.m. Confrontation training is a must-have training course for almost every faction. Ron had participated in it before, but if he hadn't used the Thunder Fruit at that time, he couldn't compete with the new recruits of the same period in boxing, kicking and swordsmanship. Not to mention experience and skills, the physical fitness alone was enough to widen the gap. The foundation was weak and there was no comparison. But now it's different. Even if he doesn't use the power of the fruit, the power in his body is enough to make the recruits despair. Compared with the simple fruit ability users, Ron is a guy who pays more attention to the development of his body than the devil fruit. He would rather let his body drive the development of the fruit than become a useless person without the fruit. Self-challenge is not just about pursuing destruction. When Ron arrived at the square, the seats in the Colosseum were already full of people who came to watch the test. It is worth mentioning that at this time, they all changed direction. The seats that were wrapped in a circle during the Daoli test in the morning were cut in the middle and stretched to the left and right, forming an arc, embracing the square in front that could accommodate 100,000 people. The huge square was filled with high platforms. On each platform, there was an instructor standing with his feet crossed and his hands behind his back. They were responsible for protecting the recruits from fatal injuries during the confrontation training, and they also served as referees to judge the outcome. When the team of new recruits led by Zifa entered the venue, cheers resounded through the sky. Come on! You little bastards! Remember, hit him in the balls! Hit him in the balls! Ha ha ha! Ron, I'm rooting for you. In addition to cheering, officers at all levels privately discussed which new recruits in this round were worthy of their attention. The navy was just a piece of iron to the outside world, and could put aside all conflicts in front of pirates. This was an iron rule. But there were factions within the navy. Hawks and doves were just a mainstream, and more of them were different naval families, competing openly and secretly with each other to win over talents and seek benefits for their families. The navy and the world government have a similar history. They have stood on the sea for hundreds of years, and their descendants have all served in the navy. It would be a joke if there were no factional distinctions. In this world where the strong are respected, those with real potential, such as Ron, a natural genius who may become a general in the future, will benefit the family immeasurably if they make friends with him. Hey, Stein, what do you think of that Zorro? He is a promising talent, but he seems to be a little listless lately. I don't know what's wrong. Is Ron here? The Quest Kid will definitely go to help his father. If we can. Forget about it. Considering how much the Marshal cares about Ron, there is no way he would allow us to win him over. Tisk, that's right. Then I can only make myself familiar with him. Who says it isn't? It is impossible for the admirals of the navy to not know about the factions of their subordinates, but they never overly suppressed them. Because they knew that even in this world of the strong, they could not solve all problems with fists. For example, a mosquito was lying on Jabeo. As long as you don't touch things that you shouldn't touch, Jean Guo won't bother to care. For example, even a blind man can see that Ron has a bright future, and such a person cannot stand in the navy. The warring states and the world government will not allow him to stand in a certain family and become the banner of a family, leading to the dominance of that family. Moreover, compared with subordinates who are united in purpose and act like a gang, it is more conducive to ruling by leading disputes that can be controlled. It has nothing to do with good or evil, right or wrong, this is just the wisdom of a superior. After Jean Guo took the first seat, the colonel officer came on stage and began to explain the rules. The rules were not much different from the confrontation training rules, with only 3 major changes. 1. Deliberate killing is prohibited. Those who violate the order will be expelled from the navy and will never be employed again. 2. No secret operations or bribing opponents are allowed. Those who violate the order will be expelled from the navy and will never be recruited again. 3. You are not allowed to intentionally interfere with other people's competitions. Those who violate the order will be expelled from the navy and will never be recruited again. Normally, confrontation training would not result in such severe punishment as expulsion from the navy or permanent non-recruitment. For the same offense, the most that could be dealt with was imprisonment or conviction. It was purely because the occasion was too serious today, and the navy needed stronger discipline. After a brief explanation, the colonel announced, "Now, the confrontation test begins." Then, "I'll go first." Ron glanced around, and under the gaze of the recruits with twitching lips, he turned into thunder and moved at a high speed. Ordinary people could only judge that something had just flown by the mottled light and shadow left on their retinas. Even though he has not yet learned the 6 navy styles, Ron's movement speed is still terrifyingly fast. That is. It's Ron. I didn't expect him to be the first one up. Go up, that's fine. We can just sit and play. Ha ha ha. That's right, these little guys can't do anything to the nature department. There are hundreds of recruits in the recruit camp, and they are fighting against each other one by one. So there is nothing to do today, just sit there and watch the game. Therefore, the process of the competition has been adjusted to a certain extent. In summary, it is a battle for the high platform. The duration is 2 hours, and there are 30 platforms. The top recruits who are still standing on the platform at the end of the time are the top recruits. After that, the groups will be divided into 2 groups to compete against each other, and the first place will be decided in this way. It ends at about 4 o'clock. Wait. Something is wrong. Someone with sharp eyes suddenly spoke up, carefully counted the number of platforms, and then exclaimed, "Why is there one missing?" There are only 29 platforms. What? Hiss, it's true. There are only 29 tables, doesn't that mean there are only 14 groups of winners competing? There is one more person who will either get a bye and advance directly. Or... Hey, could it be? Seeing Ron's indifferent look, he obviously noticed this as well. The onlookers who came to watch the performance looked back at Zifa and the man stretching his muscles beside Zifa, and their mouths twitched. Now, there is something good to watch. Ha 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 ha. You little idiot, you've got this day too. Garp's signature hearty laugh echoed in the quiet boss area, the sound was so loud that it was deafening. Sengoku raised an eyebrow and snorted, "Be quiet, Garp." Oh. After picking his nose nonchalantly, Cap looked back at Ron and puffed again, spraying the donut crumbs all over the floor. Ha 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 ha. But, this is so funny. Ah, what are you so happy about, Mr. Cap? Suddenly, a figure slowly walked onto the stage. He had fluffy black hair, was tall and slender, and was wearing a white jacket and a blue shirt, with the suit jacket lazily draped over his shoulders. He exuded a kind of listless aura. What? Hearing the voice, Garp looked back and said with a smile, "You're back so soon, Kuzan." That's right. The visitor was none other than Kuzan, one of the strongest fighters in the Marine headquarters and one of the 3 admirals who went out to sea to carry out a mission, codenamed Aokiji. Yeah, I thought it would be a lot of trouble, but I didn't expect. Ugh. In the middle of his words, Aokiji stretched and yawned loudly. Then he rubbed his eye mucus and said to Zhangguo, "You think too much, Marshal. It's a good thing that there are no big troubles. This world needs peace." Zhangguo answered calmly, paused, and added, "After watching the game, go back and hand in the report to me immediately. It's nothing to be lazy all day long. Do you understand?" "Hey, I understand." Aokiji shrugged, not surprised by this. That lazy look really didn't resemble the majestic admiral of the navy at all. With these 3 generals around, it's no wonder that Zhangguo doesn't care about Ron's personality issues. In comparison, he is the most normal guy. After greeting Garp and the others, he came to the seat that belonged to the admiral and sat down, slumped. Kizaru next to him came up, pouted his lips and smiled obscenely. "Hey, Kuzan, you look so tired, do you want to take a gamble on the next mission attendance opportunity?" Okay, but what are we betting on?" Turning over, Aokiji answered lazily. "Let's bet on how long that kid can hold on." Kizaru pointed his chin at the quietest platform in the middle of the venue, his face full of sarcasm. "Sakazuki said he can only hold out for half an hour, I said 1 hour, how long do you bet on?" His originally dull vision suddenly became bright after he stopped at the platform. Aokiji rubbed his chin and said in surprise, "The opponent is actually Brigadier General Shusa? Is this kid that strong?" Chapter 29 Special Meaning, The Terrifying Shuzo. Aokiji had been away for several months and knew nothing about what happened at the headquarters. It was normal for him to feel strange after seeing who Ron's opponent was. After all, in the year-end test, recruits from the same period were not arranged, but instructors were chosen to compete on the field. There were a total of 29 platforms, but as far as he could remember, there were only 2 times. The first time I heard. In the year-end evaluation, Garp and Zephyr fought for the podium, and the battle was fierce. Among the 3 people, Sengoku sat alone on the podium. In the face of the abnormal power of the mythical beast-type Buddha fruit, no one in the same period could match him, not even Crane. After careful consideration, Marshal Kong asked the chief instructor of the recruit camp at that time to arrange for the instructor to fight with Sengoku. If he persisted for 2 hours, he would be promoted directly, which set a precedent. The second time was when he witnessed that it was in this group that he and Sakazuki were divided into a group in advance. Borsellino was a bye, and Zephyr arranged for Shuzo to fight against Kizaru. There is no need to mention these people's later achievements. They are all top figures. But in the decades since, there has been no third example. Because the overall strength of the new recruits that came later was simply not as good as in the past, in the headquarters recruit camp with countless geniuses and strong men, they could find their own opponents, and there was no absolute overlord dominating. As you can imagine, being invincible and having no rivals among peers is a difficult and glorious thing. The value and significance behind it is immense. Aokiji was shocked to see such a scene when he just came to watch the ceremony as a routine. Is there anything special about him? Why haven't I seen him before? Come, let me tell you. Such and such, such and such. After listening, Aokiji's eyes darkened and he looked at Ron seriously. I see. The thunder fruit. Thunder, lightning in the sky. Aokiji is very familiar with the Thunder God Island in the New World. Before Hell Island was developed, it was a training ground that the best Navy recruits had to go to. The island was covered with dark clouds and lightning snakes were dancing wildly. What was pouring down from the sky was not raindrops, but terrible purple-black thunder. In front of such a vast power, anyone would feel so insignificant and powerless. Even if he now has the ability to destroy Thunder God Island, that inviolable majesty is always engraved in Aokiji's heart. Interesting. He raised his lips slightly, thought for a moment, and said, "You have chosen the most likely times. 2 hours is no different from winning." Then I. Before he could finish his words, Kizaru's eyes widened. "Hey, come on, you want to bet on him to win?" "No, I'll bet for an hour too." Smacking his lips, Aokiji showed a strange smile on his face. "Admiral Akainu, you must be prepared, you have to go on 2 missions in a row." "Hey! How ridiculous!" Akainu snorted coldly, crossed his arms and lowered his gaze. In response, the two looked at each other and didn't care. Akainu was of this character, and it would be a fantasy for him to argue with them. And win? How can it be? Even the warring states of the past could not hold out for 2 hours from the instructor. Before breaking through the limits of ordinary people, the accumulation of time is much stronger than talent. But it is worth mentioning that there was only one exception later, Kizaru. Relying on the world-leading movement speed of the Pika Pika no Mi, he continuously restrained and dodged, and finally found an opportunity to delay for 2 hours. Then he used his unchanging slow-speaking speed and obscene expression to tell Zifa that even if he was not good at physical skills, he could still stand at the top of the world relying solely on the power of the fruit. Zifa was so mad. But, when did that happen? 20 years ago. The Xiuzhou of today is completely different. He has already developed a unique way of dealing with these guys with amazing movement speeds. How could he possibly suffer a second loss? Moreover, Kizaru was able to accomplish this a year after he joined the Navy. After intensive training on Thunder God Island, his Dao power value reached 1,500, which enabled him to withstand Shuzou's fierce attack. How long had Ron been around? 2.5 months in total. The Dao power value is only 700. Half the difference from Kizaru. And the platform there is made of wood and does not conduct electricity. Fighting against Shuzou, a standard Navy taijutsu expert who was several times stronger than him in a small area, was already a non-starter. Now even the environment was restrained, leaving no room for him to take advantage of the situation. What Ron should consider is indeed how long he can hold out. The Admiralty Square is bustling with noise and bustle. On the other 28 platforms, the sound of fighting continued. Flesh and flesh, knives and blood, the recruits seized this once-a-year opportunity to let their hormones run wild and show themselves in front of all the naval leaders. A beautiful victory today may determine their future. So even though they knew that going on stage first would result in a round-robin battle, which would be detrimental to the final result, some of them still went ahead with the idea of showing their courage. Just moments after the battle began, dozens of people fell off the stage and were declared losers. But immediately, a new challenger rushed forward and challenged the champion. However, unlike the other platforms, Ron's platform 29 was where Xiuzhou had just come up. The instructor and referee in charge of this place decisively ran away, not even doing his job. Creak, creak. His knuckles made a constant crackling sound as Xiuzhou pressed them. Wearing a black off-shoulder t-shirt, Xiuzhou had a sneer on his face. Hey, isn't this Ron? Why do you look so grim? Did you see that I'm desperate? Ron raised his eyebrows when he heard this. What do you think? If I don't cry, will I laugh? This is definitely Zifa-sensei targeting me, right? You came here with the intention of beating me to death, right? Don't treat me like a fool. You guys are just trying to make up for it. Below the platform, Zephyr heard these words through his observation haki, and his eyelids twitched rapidly. Kill that bastard, Xiuzhou. Understand? After answering loudly, Xiuzhou shrugged and said, don't say such harsh words. Wooden venues are easier to make. The year-end evaluation has always been like this. And what's the point of beating you to death? I'm your instructor, how could I beat you to death? At most. Boom. As soon as he finished speaking, Xiuzhou suddenly burst out at his strongest speed. Under Ron's horrified gaze, his whole body turned into a black line and suddenly rushed in front of him. At most. I'll beat you to a half paralysis. Boom, boom. The gas exploded, and a circle of smoke and dust appeared in the air. An invisible column of gas burst out, pierced through the clouds, and disappeared into the blue sky. The serious Xiuzhou is completely different from the Xiuzhou who limited himself during the test and was disturbed by the steel channel. Every move is the result of years of hard training. There is no unnecessary movement and it is extremely powerful. The failure 20 years ago brought him an unforgettable lesson. Today, he would beat Ron down no matter what. What? After throwing a fierce punch, Xiuzhou smiled slightly, thinking that it was a sure win. But suddenly, he cried out in surprise and looked at his wrist that had passed through Ron's chest. He was sure that he had covered his fist with armament haki, and Ron could not dodge this punch by using elementalization. But such a strange scene made him realize that the opponent had calculated the time of his attack and had performed elementalization in advance. The natural elementalization is divided into active and passive. Armament haki cannot make the elementalization ineffective, but only contacts the entity to cancel its passive effect. However, after the opponent's active elementalization disperses the body, armament haki is useless. After all, if it is still effective at this time, wouldn't it be equivalent to directly inserting your hand into the opponent's internal organs? Then the natural system is too weak. Faced with this situation, Xiuzhou's mouth twitched, and he had to pull back to avoid the thunder coming from Ron's palm. Boom! Tsitsizi! An electric net coiled up, separating the two of them, and disappeared after a few seconds. Looking at Ron drifting backwards and regrouping at a safe distance, Xiuzhou gritted his teeth in dissatisfaction. TCH, little slippery man. In response, Ron curled his lips, a strange smile appeared on his face, he clasped his hands together, squinted his eyes and said, "Same here. Your sneak attack skills are also very good." Xiuzhou's sneak attack was extremely swift. If he hadn't transformed his body into elements in advance and dispersed it, that punch would have knocked him down. In order to win, Xiuzhou is completely shameless. The horror of the natural system can be seen from this. Even Ron can avoid the powerful attacks of Navy fighters like Xiuzhou. But actively transforming the body into elements and dispersing it will consume a lot of physical strength. It was impossible for Ron to predict where his attack would land, so he must have transformed his entire body into elements. In this way, if he can hold on for an hour, Xiuzhou is willing to admit defeat directly. Humph! You're just being stubborn. Let's see how long you can hold out. With a cold snort, Shozo came close again. With the full speed of such an elite, coupled with the Navy 6 styles and shave that had almost become instinctive, the speed was no slower than that of Ron's lightning movement. Therefore, Ron could only see an afterimage, and in the blink of an eye, Shozo's fist landed on him again. So fast! But exactly what I want! Whoosh! Bang! With a sneer on his face, Ron let the explosive fist wind shatter him into small snakes of lightning, and then tried hard to capture the electromagnetic field in the air. The next second, his figure flashed. Teleport. Chapter 30 The Horror of the 6 Teleportation Styles. The teleportation of the Thunder Fruit users is actually very simple. The planet itself has a strong enough magnetic field. All they need to do is use the electromagnetic field to move the electric current, body, over. Because they are lightning, they need to eat, drink, defecate and urinate like normal creatures, and they are not human at all. This mysterious and magical way of moving is just a piece of data traveling through the network through a data cable on Earth. It's an instinct within an instinct. The only difficulty is how to capture the magnetic field trajectory and transfer it. Ron did not awaken his observation haki, and could only rely on the Lightning Man's keen perception of magnetic fields. However, his strongest thunderbolt was only 30 million volts, which was a big gap compared to the future Enel. It was a pipe dream to fight against the planet's magnetic field, and it could not allow him to travel freely between magnetic fields. So he came up with a trick. Elementalize. His elemental transformation is not only used to avoid Shozo's domineering attacks, but also to capture electromagnetic fields in this way that continuously consumes a lot of physical strength, using every trace of lightning in his body to outline nodes for easy teleportation. The distance of this teleportation is not far. After the elementalization, the area that can be affected at most includes the high platform. Unless the observation haki is awakened, the magnetic field farther away can be captured, but it is enough at this time. So at this moment, Shozo looked at the empty space in front of him in shock, his eyes wide open, somewhat unable to believe it. At that moment just now, Luoxiu did not move away from in front of him, but disappeared out of thin air. Any object that moves will leave traces, and those traces will be captured by the observation haki. This is true no matter how fast the speed. This is the absolute truth. But there is a problem that even if the trace is discovered, whether people can react or not. For example, even if Kizaru's world-class radiant fruit is discovered, few people can make an appropriate counterattack. But just now, he didn't find any trace of movement. Ron disappeared in front of him like a ghost and then appeared behind him. There is no trace of this process. Could it be, that thing in front just now was an illusion? No, not possible. This idea was rejected as soon as it came up. Observation haki will not lie. Under the premise that Ron does not have the ability to create a physical clone, it is certain that the person in front of it was Ron, so it must be Ron. It was just that through some means unknown to him, he offset or hid his own tracks. You've got a lot of stuff hidden, Ron. In the stands, Zifa raised his lips, in a good mood. He also failed to catch Ron's movement trajectory, but he could understand what this ability was. In order to teach Ron, he dug up the information of the Thunder Fruit ability users hundreds of years ago from the warehouse, so of course he could see it. He thought Ron would never be able to do it, but he never thought that he would be stimulated by Shozo's exaggerated offensive ability and pry out a trump card. This little bastard even hid it from me. Although he was cursing, everyone could see the smile on Zifa's face. On the platform, Kizaru and the others also discovered the strangeness of Ron's movement through their observation haki. In the absence of detailed information about the Thunder Fruit, they were unaware of it. However, that strange way of moving would not be suitable for a battle, especially a battle where victory could be won by dragging it out. From the looks of it, Admiral Akainu, you'll be busy in the days ahead. Humph. The outcome is still undecided, just wait and see. Okay, as long as you are happy. Xiuzhou is indeed a practical man among the elite troops of the headquarters. Although he doesn't understand how Ron did it, he is obviously very clear about the key points of this battle. That is to defeat Ron. So he hesitated for less than 0.3 seconds, took a step forward to stop his momentum, turned around and twisted his body, and lashed out with his foot like a whip. Lanja! Call out! The kick was so powerful that it made the air whimper, and the edge of the kick was faintly visible. But before he stood firm, Ron was ready to attack. Be careful not to stand on one foot, Brigadier General Xiuzhou, are you not paying attention to what's behind you? Nanny! Suddenly turning back, Xiuzhou saw only lightning all over the sky, filling his sight. For a moment, the lightning was blazing, and the electric current was surging. 30 million volt thunder drill. It is indeed cool to transform lightning into animal form, but the only lethal force left is lightning, which is flashy and not what Ron likes. He likes simple, rough, and powerful. Condensing lightning into a drill bit can reduce the attack contact area and increase its power, making it perfect for surprise attacks. At the same time, the rotating lightning current will stir the electromagnetic field even more violently, and its power should not be underestimated. At this distance, the spiral pattern on the drill bit formed by lightning was clearly visible, and an invisible thrust suddenly rose, causing Xiuzhou to lean back uncontrollably. That was an electromagnetic pulse, a chain reaction caused by Ron's lightning release. The lightning attack from the thunder fruit was not just thunder, but also contained conditions that were allowed to exist in the physical world, such as the destructive chaotic current and indiscriminate shock surge that enveloped the entire platform. The lightning drill and the surge hit Xiuzhou's single leg one after another, and then exploded suddenly. Boom, boom. Rumbling thunder resounded through the sky, shocking the audience so much that they could not help but cover their ears. The other platforms were affected by the explosions one after another, and the battle came to a standstill. In the stands, Kizaru narrowed his eyes slightly, used his observation haki to sense something, and said regretfully, "It's a good idea, and the opportunity was well seized, but unfortunately. Yes, the only chance, missed." Aokiji spoke calmly and glanced at the platform. Having suffered a loss once, Xiuzhou will not make the same mistake again. Ron is a little too naive. In other words, his definition of powerful is not very clear. The chaotic and violent electric currents stirred in all directions, causing Ron to squint his eyes and take a half step back. He then spread the electric waves into the space in all directions, ready to teleport at any time, and patiently waited for the result. Logically speaking, even Xiuzhou wouldn't be able to keep his balance after suffering such a heavy blow while standing on one leg. When he was attacked before, Ron deliberately stepped back to create some distance and landed on the edge of the platform. As expected, Xiuzhou attacked fiercely and was distracted by his teleportation. At this time, he used the thunder drill to attack the support point to make it lose balance. Every step was within Ron's calculation. Logically speaking, falling down was his only outcome. When defending on a high platform, it doesn't matter whether you go to the sky or the ground. As long as the horizontal distance exceeds the edge of the platform, you will be the loser. However, Aokiji is right. I have to say, well done Ron. Suddenly, a deep voice came from the edge of the high platform surrounded by lightning. Ron was startled and subconsciously took another half step back. At this moment, a dark hand waved forward, dispersing the lightning and revealing a figure behind it. Xiuzhou slowly walked out of the smoke and dust. The edge of the platform behind him was charred all around. But where Xiuzhou had stood before, the wooden block was intact, with only a footprint left in the middle, a footprint that was only 2 centimeters deep, without piercing the entire wooden board, and without even leaving a single crack. At that moment, Xiuzhou stepped down with all his strength, and with the inertia of twisting his body and sweeping, he forcibly used the barrier created by the wooden board to block Ron's carefully planned winning blow. The force was not more or less, and while completely offsetting the impact, it did not damage the wooden board at all. It is conceivable that if the wooden board breaks, Ron will certainly attack again. At that time, even if he can turn back with the moon step, Xiuzhou cannot guarantee that he will not go beyond the edge of the platform. Hiss! After seeing how Xiuzhou ensured that he would not fall, Ron took a deep breath and sighed sincerely. Monster! Is this the power of Rokushiki? Or in other words, life is returned. This kind of terrifying control is something he cannot envy. Only by practicing the 6 navy styles to the extreme and perfectly controlling every bit of strength in the body, even the hair, can this be achieved. It's unbelievable and beyond comprehension. Of course. Hearing this, Xiuzhou suppressed his panic and smiled. The Navy 6 styles are not simple attack moves. Although the fight with Ron was short, Xiuzhou still had the same feeling of being crushed by intelligence as a month ago. In this month, he had seen Ron's ferocious fighting style and perseverance. He almost forgot that the most terrifying thing about Ron was not his strength, but his insidious and cunning control over the battle situation. Ron could not envy his powerful control over his body, and Xiuzhou could not compete with Ron in understanding the battle situation. However, the same move will not work twice against Saint Seiya. Xiuzhou. Even if the sneak attack failed this time, there won't be a second time. I failed to defend my title last time, and there won't be a second time. Chapter 31, All's Fair in a Fierce Battle. Tisk, that's trouble. The smile on Xiuzhou's face revealed his confidence. The more powerful a person is, the less likely he is to be mysterious. He must have made sufficient preparations. For Ron, this is not good news. It can only be delayed for now. Having made up his mind, Ron raised his hands, lightning wrapped around his body, and sky-blue thunder spread from his shoulders to his palms, forming 2 angry thunder dragons, which launched an attack accompanied by a roar. 30 million volts, 2 dragons playing with a pearl. Zzz. The air was filled with a foul smell from the burning thunder and lightning, and even the sky was much darker. Amid the deafening roar, the thunder dragon rushed. Just the momentum alone was enough to make ordinary people unable to control themselves and hide in fear. How brave! Seeing that Ron not only did not run away but instead took the initiative to attack, Xiuzhou snorted angrily and clenched his fists. As an extremely dangerous aura appeared, the pair of iron fists were wrapped in thick armed color domineering, which made Ron tremble with fear. Xiuzhou's strength cannot be judged by his military rank of brigadier general. If he really fights, he is no weaker than an ordinary lieutenant general. Otherwise, he will not be able to convince the public and become Zifa's right-hand man entrusted with important tasks. With his domineering power, Xiuzhou faced the Thunder Dragon head-on without dodging. A second before the Thunder Dragon was about to hit him, he raised his fists and hammered on the Thunder Dragon's teeth. Next moment, bang! With a huge explosion, the Thunder Dragon's head, which was made of lightning, was smashed to pieces in the blink of an eye. The terrible energy blew up a strong wind, and the tiny lightning was like a candle in the wind, disappearing into the air. After doing this, Xiuzhou kicked his feet and turned into a black line to continue attacking Ron. Shave! Bang! The punch still missed, but it broke the thick wooden board into pieces, with wood chips flying everywhere. I knew you would come rushing over here. He teleported his body several meters behind to avoid Xiuzhou's sudden attack. Ron made his hands into claws and pulled them towards his chest, crossing them left and right. Come back! Thunder Dragon! Okay! Xiuzhou cried out in surprise and looked back, only to see that the lightning that should have been dispersed suddenly gathered together and transformed into 2 thunder dragons, opening their mouths to bite him. This is... Without having time to think, Xiuzhou made a prompt decision, gave up the attack, turned around and kicked out. Bang! Bang! 2 more explosions were heard, and Xiuzhou released his observation haki. He noticed that except for the part where the fist and foot intersected, the rest of the thunder dragon was still intact. He understood. I see. It looks like two single lightning attacks, but they are actually composed of several different lightnings. Sure enough, the moment he retracted his feet and stood firm, the remaining lightning continued to pounce forward, opened its big mouth, and bit him fiercely. Boom! With the help of teleportation, Ron appeared at the edge of the corner, a smile on his face. Did you find it? You are worthy of being Instructor Shiuzo. He doesn't like simple attacks in the form of transformation. The thunder dragon looks like a dragon-shaped lightning, but it is actually 5 attacks composed of 5 different pieces of thunder. Break up the dragon head in the front and cut off the dragon body in the middle. The remaining parts can still continue to attack. Only by destroying it as a whole can it be completely destroyed. Otherwise, he would not have named it Two Dragons Playing with a Pig. This is the only remaining evil taste that Ron has as an earthling. Seeing Shiuzo covered by lightning, Ron seized the opportunity to attack. Because his opponent was Shiuzo, he had to remember his identity as a mage. 30 million volt lightning gun. 10 million volts grid. 30 million volts discharge. Boom, boom, boom. Thunders bombarded Shiuzo, and for a moment the lightning was dazzling and exploding. Ordinary people would have been reduced to ashes and killed hundreds of times by the high temperature of lightning. But the one standing inside at this moment was Shiuzo, a big shot ranked among the generals of this department. Although Ron's attack was ingenious, it could not bring a decisive victory. Humph! Such a trifle! Just, disperse! With a roar, the tall and strong figure raised his fists and shook off the lightning wrapped around his body. From time to time, thin streams of lightning flowed on his dark skin, and with his ferocious face and red eyes, he looked extremely fierce. After the lightning was dispersed, Shiuzo felt the tingling sensation on his skin and grinned. It's powerful, but useless. Die! Boom! There was a loud explosion, and Shiuzo quickly rushed to Ron. But Ron, who had been dodging before, did not continue to teleport. Instead, he clenched his fists, with electric light all around him and his eyes deep blue. Overload mode, 10 million volts. Okay. This little bastard, why doesn't he hide? Shiuzo's eyes suddenly widened, not understanding why. In the stands, there was a lot of noise for a while because Ron was in a head-on confrontation attitude. Hey, he can't be that stupid, right? It's over. What happened to Ron? He was fine just now. Could it be that he can no longer perform that kind of movement? That's possible. But when the others were in doubt, Kizaru and the others could see that Ron had not changed much from before. This showed that even though the teleportation technique consumed a lot of energy, it was far from reaching its limit. And so, what does this little guy want to do? Not only the people watching were like this, but also Shiuzo on the platform was like this. Don't take it lightly, beware of fraud. With this in mind, Shiuzo subconsciously relaxed his strength, ready to jump back to the center of the stage immediately if anything went wrong. However, until his fist collided head-on with Ron's fist, the danger he had anticipated did not arrive. Instead, Ron smiled cunningly and roared angrily at this moment. Overload lightning fist. Bang! After the shock, the entire viewing platform fell into dead silence for a moment as people looked at the figure walking backwards quickly. Even a pin drop could be heard. Because the person who retreated was Shiuzo. In the clash with the new recruit Ron, Brigadier General Shiuzo was clearly at a disadvantage. This unscientific. How is it possible? Brigadier General Shiuzo. Could it be that Ron is hiding his strength? But you can all see the power of this punch, right? The crowd suddenly became noisy and suspicious. The difference in Dao power between the two sides was several times, and this move was not as powerful as the earth-shattering one in the morning test. How could it possibly defeat Shiuzo? Could it be? Swish! Everyone's eyes fell on Ron. Looking at the smiling face of the fox cub who had succeeded in stealing a chicken, everyone felt as uncomfortable as if they had eaten shit. Hiss, what a cunning little guy. Pwa ha 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 ha. Great job, Ron. Garp was stunned for a second, then he realized the key point, and laughed wildly, bending over and pounding his legs. The three admirals also understood the reason, staring at Ron in a daze, and after a long time, Kizaru broke the silence. Although I've said it once, I still want to say, this Ron, well, is very unique. Humph. Just trying to be sneaky. Akainu did not appreciate this, but he was not annoyed by Ron's actions. He knew very well that strength and brains were both indispensable to the navy. When strength was not enough to solve the problem, brains were the most important thing. Soldiers at the lowest level don't need brains, they just need to fight bravely and obey orders. But the backbone of the navy who come out of the recruit camp, the future command level, stupid people are absolutely not allowed. It's true that Ron took a shortcut, but he succeeded, which shows that he has brains. On the contrary. On the platform, Shiuzo stared blankly at his fist. He was not hurt much by the armament haki. But he was repelled head-on by Ron, and he was in an advantageous position when he took the initiative to attack. This made Shiuzo a little bit unacceptable. Why? Did he hide his strength? That's absolutely impossible. As a disciple trusted by Zifa, Shiuzo could not possibly misjudge a person's true level, otherwise he would not be able to shoulder the important responsibility of being the person in charge of the testing ground. So the only explanation is, you fool me. Looking at Shiuzo's confused and angry face, Ron raised his eyebrows. Wow! You can answer questions quickly. Chapter 32, Shiuzo's past decides the outcome. Die! Bastard! On the stage, the battles in other venues gradually came to an end. The strong ones used their colleagues who were wailing and healing under the stage to intimidate others and took the time to catch their breath and recuperate. There were also those who were unwilling to give up and continued to go on stage, trying to pry a brick off the gradually stabilizing high wall. And on platform 29, the battle has just begun. At least in Shiuzo's opinion, it is true. Been played. In front of the entire navy, he was fooled. Shiuzo now only has this one thought. He understood what was happening. When Ron showed that he was going to have a head-on collision with him, he was wary of a trick, so he restrained a lot of his strength and waited for an opportunity to strike. But he didn't expect that this was the result Ron was waiting for. At the moment when he restrained his strength and his old strength was exhausted, he suddenly attacked with the strongest attack in his normal state, forcing him to retreat. Fortunately, he was in the center of the field at that time, otherwise this move would have a good chance of knocking him directly off the edge of the platform. But even if he didn't fall off the platform, he still lost face. The famous practical brigadier general was defeated by the new recruit in a head-on fight, which was even more embarrassing than Ron's trickery to defeat him a month ago. There was no external factor involved, it was purely due to the opponent's own IQ crushing. It's shameful. So fucking shameful. Shiuzo was extremely angry. He didn't want to think about those twists and turns anymore. He used extreme moves frequently and wanted to defeat Ron with the strongest posture. Anyway, he had the armed color domineering, and Ron's lightning couldn't cause much damage to him. He was like a tank with extremely thick armor, charging at the thin ranger Ron again and again. Once you succeed, the consequences are self-evident. That's a bit reckless, Brigadier General Shiuzo. Yeah, but that's understandable, right? Pfft, hush, keep your voice down. In the stands, the audience couldn't help laughing. Shiuzo's angry look was hilarious. But no matter how funny it was, Shiuzo's strength was there. After the opponent's outburst, Ron was gradually forced into a disadvantage. At this time, the situation was extremely dangerous. If he was not careful, he would be kicked off the stage by the angry Shiuzo. That's about it, right? Let me check the time. Kizaru said slowly, rolling up his sleeves. 55 minutes. Well, we should win. Hearing this, Akainu's mouth twitched twice involuntarily, and he snorted coldly, saying nothing more. He had indeed lost this bet, and half an hour had already passed. He was not someone who could not afford to lose, and Kizaru's behavior of pretending to check the time with the black monitoring den mushi was very hateful in his eyes. But at this moment, Aokiji, who had been half asleep, suddenly opened his eyes, looked at the platform carefully, and said calmly, "Although I really want to take a vacation, it seems that the result is not certain." Okay. Kizaru turned around in surprise and glanced at Aokiji. Do you think there is still a chance for him to turn around? Boom. As he was speaking, there was another explosion. In anger, Shiuzo exerted 100% of his strength. In addition, the platform was narrow. Even though the Thunder Fruit had an amazing speed and Ron himself had mastered the teleportation technique, in front of the observation haki, every time he finished moving, he would be met with Shiuzo's explosive punch. He could only continue to dodge and fell into an infinite passive loop. Over time, the biggest difference between the new recruits and the veterans was exposed. That was that Ron's breathing became heavier, his chest kept rising and falling, and his physical strength was almost exhausted. On the other hand, Shiuzo didn't seem to have any consumption at all. The humans in this world are all monsters, and the more powerful they are, the more so. In the original Punk Hazard, Aokiji and Akainu fought for 10 days and 10 nights without rest, which shows that, as an elite soldier of the headquarters, he has no problem fighting for 3 days and 3 nights in a row. If they continue to drag on, Ron will eventually make a mistake due to exhaustion. Then Shiuzo will be able to easily catch him and take him down in one fell swoop. Yes, there is hope. Looking at the man chasing the light on the platform, Aokiji yawned slowly and replied, "But it was not created by him, but whether Shiuzo gave it to him." You mean? As the only one who defeated the instructor in the recruit camp, Kizaru is very familiar with Shiuzo's fighting style. When he heard Aokiji say this, he suddenly remembered something. Shiuzo was not an instructor in the recruit camp at the beginning. He was a veteran of the same class as the Flying Squirrel. It was 30 years ago that he received training under Zifa. In the battle with him 20 years ago, Shiuzo was a special training instructor. After graduating from school, Shiuzo fought in many battles and made countless military achievements. He soon became an outstanding Navy officer who could take on responsibilities independently. However, due to some personality reasons, his military rank could not be promoted. Later, Edward Weeble, who called himself Whitebeard II, attacked the training ship. His beloved disciples were slaughtered and one of his hands was cut off. Zephyr was devastated. At that time, Zifa, who was tortured by guilt and pain all day long, rarely intervened in the affairs of the recruit camp, and even began to deny his existence as the chief instructor. So Zhangguo had to think of a way to maintain the daily management of the recruit camp before Zifa cheered up. Coincidentally, Shiuzo, who had committed another crime, was under house arrest at the Marine headquarters. Considering his relationship with Zephyr, Sengoku arranged for him to come to the recruit camp. I stayed there for many years. If you ask Shiuzo what personality factors caused him to not be promoted, it is that he is very easy to get angry. Once he gets angry, he will ignore all the small details except for the big picture. The pirates who were being chased that time took advantage of this and deliberately angered him. When he led his team to attack fiercely, they fought and retreated, and sent some people to attack from behind, resulting in heavy casualties in the navy. Although he succeeded in wiping out the pirates in the end, it has always been the case that merits are not worth faults. Letting such a person enter the high-level command is something that the warring states must avoid. The world government can be corrupt, and the Navy branch can have scum, but in the Navy headquarters, even letting incompetent people hold high positions is absolutely not allowed. Looking at the original work, the high-level officials of the Navy headquarters are all righteous people without any stains to criticize. Kizaru rubbed the beard on his chin, his eyes fixed on the platform from behind his brown sunglasses. I see, as expected, there is no fun anymore. Akainu was stunned for a moment and asked, what do you mean? What I mean is, Shiuzo is doomed to lose. We all lose. Aokiji yawned lazily, waved his hand, and stood up. Forget it, I'd better go back to write the report, otherwise I won't have any rest tonight. Bye. After Aokiji left, Akainu looked at Kizaru and frowned. What's going on? He didn't see how Ron won, so why were these two guys so sure that Ron won? The current situation was not good for Ron. How should I put it? Holding his chin up, Kizaru tilted his face and thought obscenely, then spat out 4 words, win or lose. It is hard to tell who is better among the 3 admirals, all of them are outstanding people of the time. However, Aokiji's thinking is a little more flexible than the other 2. At this moment, he was enlightened by Kizaru. Suddenly, Akainu turned his head and locked his eyes on the high platform, instead of the 2 people fighting. Hiss! Shuzo was careless. Lanja! The tall Shuzo leaped up like a moving fortress. He then raised his foot, squeezed the air with his toes, and swept out fiercely. Suddenly, accompanied by the vibration of the air, dark green sword energy burst out. And below, the thunder dragon roared endlessly, facing the sword energy of Lanjiao head-on. Laugh! With a crisp sound, the sky blue thunder dragon was instantly cut into 2 pieces. At the same time, Shiuzo stomped his right foot in the air, making a sound of empty sound, and dived towards Ron. Moon step. Seeing this scene, Ron took a deep breath. This is the only and last chance, so. At this moment, he had already been overloaded, and the consumption of continuous fierce battles was not something he could afford. But he did not admit defeat. Instead, for this opportunity, he forced himself to endure the pain of physical exhaustion and weakness in his limbs and waited patiently. Finally, the opportunity has come. Watching Zaihuzuo diving downward at a 45-degree angle to the ground, Ron turned into thunder and summoned up his last bit of strength to teleport upwards to dodge. Bang! Shiuzo landed on the ground, smashing the already charred wooden board into pieces. Since he was defending on a high platform, he always controlled the strength and did not directly collapse the platform. However, this attack brought him unexpected results. Because of where his fist hit, the wooden boards instantly shattered and turned into ashes, without giving him any reaction force. At the same time, Ron appeared in the air with his hands crossed. The last shot overload Thunder Fist. Bang! Nanny! Suddenly, Shiuzo was shocked. Chapter 33 Victory Instrument completed. When Ron's fist landed, Shiuzo had already turned around. Seeing Ron's lightning fist, which was several times weaker than the previous one, Shiuzo was very surprised. In his opinion, he could easily block this punch and would not be hurt at all. And Ron took the initiative to use the lightning fist to rush forward and close the distance, so he would rather give up defense and subdue him on the spot to end the fight. Now Shiuzo doesn't want to think about all those twists and turns anymore, he just wants to win this test. Coincidentally, Ron thought so too. Fighting! It's time to end it. Ron smiled slightly and punched Zaihuzuo's chest with his fist. At the same time, Zaihuzuo grabbed his arm tightly to prevent him from teleporting away again. Next! Call out! Boom, boom! Falling at high speed, the two of them fell one above the other, and hit the hard stone slabs of the square. Platform number 29, Ron vs Shiuzo, Ron wins. The referee who had been absent an hour ago came over, looked at the positions of both teams, and raised the flag to announce the result. Upon hearing the result, the stands fell into a deathly silence for a moment. Then, "No, right. That Brigadier General Shozo lost. This is a shady deal. A shady deal. How is this possible? Ahem, everyone, please be patient." At the top of the stands, Zhang Guo, who had been sitting for a day, stood up, his body aglow with golden light, dazzling. He coughed lightly, attracting everyone's attention, and then explained, "There are only two criteria for determining the winner of the high platform defense. First, one side loses the fighting ability or admits defeat. Second, whoever steps out of the high platform area first will be unconditionally declared the loser." Although Ron and Zaihuzuo rushed out of the high platform together, Zaihuzuo was ahead, so Ron won this battle. After hearing Zhang Guo's words, the audience remembered that the confrontation test did have these two rules. Now that Zhang Guo had awakened them, the few people who had previously shouted about the inside story suddenly blushed and lowered their heads in shame. However, they soon came to their senses and cast their burning gazes on the young man who was slowly climbing up from the pit under the high platform. Since the marshals of the Warring States period have determined that the victory or defeat is established, doesn't that mean he did it? A new recruit in a confrontation test. A fair victory over Shozo. Ron! 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 In an instant, cheers gathered into an ocean, drowning the square. People threw everything they could throw away into the air, cheering for this victory that would go down in history, for the super rookie of the Navy headquarters. Under the stage, Ron opened his hands, an excited smile on his tired face, and gestured to the cheering audience around him. At this moment, even if there are still 28 platforms fighting, no one can take away the glory that belongs to him. At the beginning of the year 1515 of the Kayan calendar, the first place in the new recruit camp of the Navy headquarters was given to Ron unconditionally. Attack power value 2700. Ranked first. Physical strength value is 700. Ranked first. In the confrontation training, he defeated Brigadier General Shozo and still ranked first. With such a perfect record, he deserved the first place and no one in the recruit camp was dissatisfied. When Ron held up the Medal of Honor representing the champion, he felt a sense of unreality. From a powerless earthling to the number one among a group of monsters, in just 3 months, the span was beyond his imagination. But when Ron saw Shozo following behind Zifa, holding the second and third place prizes, he smiled. This is so real. His method of winning is neither difficult nor easy. Since he cannot be defeated head-on, he can just let Shozo rush out of the platform before him. However, the opponent can use the 6 styles of the Navy and is proficient in the moon step. Even if he accidentally breaks through the platform and falls down, he can use the moon step to turn back. Therefore, the method of directly destroying the entire platform is not feasible. So Ron deliberately angered Chiuzo, and under the opponent's fierce attack, like a weasel stealing a chicken, he carefully burned a corner of the platform that was already charred and smoking by lightning into ashes that crumbled at the touch. Then he waited for an opportunity when Chiuzo could not use the moon step to turn back, and began to engage. The head was moving in a 45-degree downward direction, plus the inertia brought by his falling lightning fist, and the fact that Shozo grabbed his hand to prevent himself from escaping in elemental form, causing his center of gravity to be out of his control. The combination of these 3 conditions made it impossible for Shozo to complete the instant turn and the moon step to return. By the time the 2 men fell to the ground, the distance between them had already exceeded the edge of the platform, and the fruits of victory were naturally pocketed by him. So at this moment, his smile seemed to be saying to Chiuzo, "I feel like getting spanked." Chiuzo responded with a fierce look that said, "Don't leave after school if you dare." Ron, down. After giving medals to the top 3 people one by one, Zifa noticed the eye contact between the 2 people. The corners of his mouth twitched and he roared in a low voice. "Be quiet! If anyone dares to embarrass himself here, I will tear him apart. Cough cough. Upon hearing this, the two of them immediately became friendly and cheerful, and finally shook hands in a friendly manner, but their hands were a little too strong, and after they let go, the palms of their hands turned blue and white. Finally, Zhang Guo gave a speech, advocating naval justice and announcing the successful completion of the year-end evaluation of this recruit camp. That night, the sky was overcast, the stars were buried by the thick clouds, and the sea was dark and quiet. The patrol soldiers walked on the quiet road of the headquarters, and there was no other noise except the sound of footsteps. At the Marine Headquarters Scientific Force Station, Kizaru's room was dimly lit. He was wearing pajamas, with sleepy eyes, and complained to Den Den Mushi, "Mr. Vegapunk, there is a time difference between the North Sea base and the headquarters. Can you consider what time it is now?" "Sorry, I was too excited." Den Den Mushi imitated a bland male face, the main feature of which was an unnatural bulge in the left eye, and a mechanical appearance. After a light apology, Vegapunk continued, "Well, briefly, the device has been debugged, and you can send a ship to pick up the first batch of 300. "Oh? So fast?" Kizaru was surprised and said, "It's you, Vegapunk. The speed at which Ron becomes stronger is truly astonishing, and the underlying reasons have been studied by many people, including Vegapunk." Finally, they came to a unanimous answer. In addition to talent, most people believe that it was the lightning stimulation method that helped. No matter how rigorously an ordinary person practices, there are still many parts of their body that are not taken care of, such as less used muscles, fragile internal organs, etc. It is not as comprehensive as the lightning stimulation method. Therefore, imitating the lightning stimulation method to provide the same training effect to ordinary people who are not users of the thunder fruit has become a topic worth studying. Although Zifa submitted the information, the control of the current intensity, the determination of the release direction, the deduction of the final effect, etc., all require a lot of thought to understand. I thought that even if Vegapunk took action, it would not be completed in a short time, but I didn't expect. In just 1 month, we have achieved mass production results. But it's only the first generation Unit 500. Although it has some effects, it has great limitations. It's best not to use it if the power is below 2000. It will have no effect if the power is above. A well-trained soldier has a Dao power of 10. A Dao power of over 500 is considered a superhuman, and it is also the limit that ordinary people can reach. In other words, if you want to use this instrument, you must first overcome the limits of the human body before you can use it for exercise. This seems a bit tasteless. Vegapunk was not being modest or regretful. He was just stating a fact as a scientific researcher, so there is still a lot of room for improvement in the instrument. If there is time, it would be best to let Ron come over. Well, tell him that I have something that can make him stronger. I believe he will be interested. Okay, I'll go talk to the marshal. Huang Yuan took over this troublesome matter, thought about it, and added, but don't hold your hopes too high. The marshal will not let Ron go out in the next year. Hey? Why 1 year? Don't worry about that. By the way, the 5 elders came to ask about the progress of the pacifists again today. Are you sure? Kizaru avoided the topic and reminded slowly, that's a subject they value very much. I can't cover it if something unexpected happens. Don't worry, soon, you will see the results. Chapter 34 6 Choices. In the new recruits barracks building, inside Zifa's office. With a cigar in one hand, Zifa sat in his seat and asked, have you chosen? What do you want to learn? Opposite him, sitting on the sofa, was Ron. Today is the 3rd day after the end-of-year test. During these 3 days, Ron has been racking his brains over a problem. The source of his problem is a piece of information in his hand, a general introduction to the 6 styles. The first place in the recruit camp's year-end test can be said to be a senior official appointed by the Navy, so even if he has not achieved anything, as the first place, Ron is qualified to learn the legendary ultimate physical training, the Navy's 6 styles. The 6 styles is a set of physical skills that the Navy has spent 100 years to develop by integrating the strengths of hundreds of schools. It is the foundation for the Navy's backbone combat power to be generally stronger than pirates. The name 6 styles represents 6 moves. The first 3 moves are the basis, which are the defensive skills and iron blocks that accelerate the movement of blood and muscles to make the body as hard as steel, shaving, which stomps on the ground more than 10 times in an instant and moves quickly with explosive power, and paper drawing, which removes all the strength of the whole body and dodges through the changes in airflow caused by the opponent's actions. The last 3 moves are derivatives that further strengthen the control of body power based on the first 3 moves. They are Moon Step, which uses explosive reaction force from instant stomping to move in the air, Finger Gun, which uses iron blocks as a continuation to concentrate the whole body's strength on the fingers and use hardened fingers to release a strike in a flash, and Storm Kick, which uses the keen perception of airflow changes obtained from paper drawing to slash through the vacuum created by ultra-high-speed kicks. It seems that there are only 6 moves, but everyone can derive their own unique moves based on the basic moves, which is of great significance in actual combat. Just like the finger gun Lien scene used by Shiuzo, dozens of finger gun attacks burst out continuously in 1 second, with amazing destructive power. And after mastering all 6 moves, you can even develop the ultimate secret, Life Return. In addition to perfectly controlling every bit of strength in the body, he could even use his hair as a killing tool when necessary. In addition, this was an amplifying skill that would make him stronger when facing a stronger opponent. Once you have learned and mastered the Life Return, you will no longer waste any energy on useless things. Every move will be as precise as the gears of an instrument, clearly judging the body's current condition and preparing for the next move in advance. In this mysterious state, even if the user's Dao power value does not change, the actual combat effectiveness will be greatly enhanced. Moreover, in addition to active use, the effect of Life Return is not hidden, but always exists. Best of all, this effect works for anyone. If Rob Lucci's strength increase after learning Life Return is 1.0, then even someone as strong as Garp will still get a 1.0 increase after learning Life Return. But 1/10 of 100 and 1/10 of 10,000 cannot be confused. Therefore, Ron must learn the basic 6 naval styles. Only. It's so hard to choose. Ron rubbed his temple with a headache and sighed, "Why do you let me choose?" As a new recruit, teaching all 6 styles to Ron is not only against the rules, but also a problem of proficiency. It is difficult to digest too much. Therefore, the first place in the year-end test only has the right to choose 2 moves from the 6 styles to learn. These 2 moves were originally assigned by Zifa, the chief instructor, based on the physical differences of the disciples, but Ron is different from the previous first place. He is very comprehensive, so comprehensive that he does not have any weaknesses. Zifa is unsure, so he gives him the right to choose. Hearing the complaints, Zifa snorted in annoyance, "Others are not eligible to choose, so stop whining. Make a decision quickly. According to the rules, after today, you will automatically be considered to have given up the 6 styles training." Of course, this sentence was Zifa's way of scaring Ron, wanting to take away his disciples' things. As a teacher, he was the first one to disagree. But Ron didn't know that he would automatically give up after hearing that today was over. He anxiously scanned the information and took a deep breath. "It's decided. I choose shaving an iron block. It would have been better if we did this earlier. What a waste of time." Zifa chuckled secretly, continued to be unfriendly, shook his cigar, and then asked curiously, "But why shaving and iron blocks? Tell me the reason." "First of all, I won't mention that these 2 moves are the most basic of the basics. Learning the basics first will also make subsequent learning easier. In addition, the shaving technique requires the user to step on the ground more than 10 times in a split second, 0.36 seconds, in order to generate enough reaction force to move quickly. The difference between the best and the average master lies not only in the coordination of the body, but also in the speed of stepping on the ground. Ron said this, raising his arms. Tsitsizi. Shhhhhhh. At this moment, Ron punched 3 times instantly, and the lightning moved with his fists, leaving a clearly visible sky blue afterimage. In terms of speed, as a user of the Thunder Fruit, I am inherently invincible. That's right. Zifa's eyes lit up, something he hadn't noticed. He also prefers shaving. Apart from the basic issues, shaving is more labor-saving than teleporting in short-distance movement. If it is combined with the special characteristics of the Lightning Man to accelerate his footsteps on the ground, it can even be faster and more practical than teleporting. Of course, the main reason is that Ron is still very weak. The speed of lightning is not slow, and it can compete with the flash fruit. But before awakening the observation haki, Ron can't react to that speed at all, and it is difficult to use it in actual combat. For example, the Thunder 20-meter race where points were deducted because of slowing down to determine position. Seeing his disciples so perceptive, Zifa nodded with satisfaction and continued to ask, "Where is the iron block?" "Hey hey!" Ron blinked, twisted his facial muscles exaggeratedly, and winked at Zifa. "Do you believe me, teacher, if I say I'm afraid of death?" Zifa. 3 seconds later. Bang! Watching Ron fly hundreds of meters and fall to the ground, Zifa called out to the soldiers who came looking for the sound, "Arrange someone to come and fix the window tomorrow, understand?" Looking at the tattered windowsill, the corners of the soldiers' mouths twitched and they looked straight ahead. Yes." While waiting for the soldiers to leave, Zifa threw the broken cigar in his hand into the ashtray, looked out the window, and suddenly laughed to himself. What a good boy! Fear death? Indeed. If you want to become stronger, not fearing death is basic, but you cannot ignore death. Ron has a terrifying self-healing ability, and ordinary injuries are not enough. The ability that grows stronger as the body grows stronger makes Zifa feel like he was still an admiral, facing Kaido on the ship of the New World Overlord Rocks. But even so, we can't take it lightly. After learning how to use Iron Block, it is conceivable that the damage Ron suffers will be greatly reduced. Combined with his terrifying self-healing ability, perhaps the Navy of the future will have a strongest creature like Kaido. But this is not the reason why you keep saying you are afraid of death. Chapter 35, A Narrow Victory 2 months later. 2 months later, in the new barracks building, inside the underground testing ground. The two shadows kept colliding, making the air bang. The strong wind blew up the debris, smashing it into pieces in the corner of the wall, showing the great strength of both sides. Zifa stood at the edge of the room with his arms folded across his chest, watching the two people fight, and suddenly shouted, "Shiuzo! Don't attack recklessly. Pay attention to the defense behind you. Understand?" Taking a half step back to create some distance, Shiuzo wiped the sweat off his face as his body was covered with bruises. "And you, Ron? If you can't control the lightning's high speed, forget it. Short-range attack is more advantageous than teleportation. Don't always think about teleporting and sneak attacks." Bright. Bang. While Ron was distracted, Shiuzo kicked him hard with his knee, knocking him flying and hitting the ceiling. He looked even more miserable than Shiuzo, with blood at the corner of his mouth and one of his eyes swollen to a slit. "Oh, Pa! Got it, teacher!" Spat out a mouthful of blood and phlegm, Luo Xiu's feet sank into the ceiling, and he hung upside down, glaring at Shiuzo. "Shameless! What can you do to me?" Ron was furious and roared. His overload mode made his whole body glow with blue light, and then he suddenly exerted force. Navy 6 styles, shave. Boom, bang. The two men collided with each other again, their fists colliding hard, and a circle of smoke and dust exploded in the air, pushing outwards. Feeling the pressure from his arm, Xiuzhou was merciless in his words, but he was already secretly frightened. Ron's growth rate was recognized to be a monster, but even so, he did not expect that in just 2 months, the other party was already not weaker than himself in terms of pure strength. From being unable to even stand steadily at the beginning to being evenly matched in the 13th match today, Ron's progress astounded him. Even though his Dao power and combat experience were still inferior to his and he was beaten badly, all the soldiers in this unit now knew that Ron had a terrifying attack that could unleash at least 4 to 5 times his own Dao power. Ron's Dao power is now 5 times as high. Xiuzhou can't stop it at all. If it was a life and death duel, the answer to who would win and who would lose was already obvious. That's fine. The better you are, the less embarrassed I will be. Thinking of this, Xiuzhou's free left hand muscles bulged, and it was obviously more than 10 centimeters thicker than his right hand, weird and ferocious. At the same time, a black halo appeared on his elbow, accompanied by a dangerous vibration, and swept forward fiercely. Iron Block King's Elbow. A pitch-black elbow swept out with force like thunder. Iron Block Armed Color Domineering +6 Force Techniques. Seeing this scene, Ron instantly made a judgment: it can't be stopped. In the past 2 months, in addition to the right to learn 2 of the 6 Navy styles as a champion reward, Ron's biggest gain was his vision. As a time traveler, he only knew the power system of the pirate world on paper, with only theory but no practice, even more so than Wang Yuan. But after 2 months, this only shortcoming is being made up for, allowing him to see Xiuzhou's attack skills at a glance and make accurate judgments. Can't stop it. But you can fight back. ZZ. Lightning flashed, and Ron instantly lowered his head, dodging the attack in an instant. Call out. The elbow smashed through the air, causing a sharp and piercing sound, and faint flames could be seen. That was the air film that burned up as the air was subjected to terrible compression. Just by strength, Xiuzhou was able to do this. It is conceivable that if Ron was hit by this elbow, even with his amazing self-healing ability, he would be seriously injured. Ha! Good opportunity. ZZ. Seeing Ron lower his head and bend over to avoid the attack, with his back exposed, Xiuzhou sneered and subconsciously raised his foot, wanting to kick him away. But at this moment, a huge lightning suddenly lit up under the hidden body. Not good. Xiuzhou's eyes widened instantly, and he stepped back to dodge. He was very aware of the power of Ron's lightning fist, which was a super high-speed punch formed by the overload form. Although it was different from Admiral Kizaru's light-speed kick, it was also enough to decide the outcome. And don't forget that his skin is now covered with cloud-like spots, and his eyes are deep blue and bright like light bulbs. This move is surprisingly familiar. Overload Secret Technique, 8 Dragons Holding Pearls. Boom! Less than half a meter back, a fist hit Xiuzhou's chin hard. 8 thunder dragons followed one after another, the earth-shaking thunder sounded in the ears, and the blue light filled the training room. The horrific blow immediately made Xiuzhou's head dizzy, and he stumbled backwards. But at this moment, Ron was relentless and didn't give Xiuzhou a chance to breathe. He still had a breath left and had to completely defeat his opponent before the after effects of overload set in. With the inertia of his punch, Ron's body flew into the air, his muscles twisting like a python, spinning around before hooking down. Overload Lightning Kick. Just one word: quick. The explosive power of lightning is unparalleled, and combined with Ron's well-tempered physique, the speed is quite astonishing. Xiuzhou, who had already been hit hard, only had time to raise his hands for support. The next second, his heel, which almost turned into a ball of blue light, kicked down, breaking through the defense of his arms and colliding with his crown. Bang! This is, what a terrifying force! The strength of a person's legs is stronger than his hands. The force of the kick on his arm gave Shizuo the illusion that he was facing Zephyr. Without time to think about it, the lightning kick, accompanied by a terrifying and agitated silver snake, exploded into a dark cloud on the spot. Boom, boom. All of a sudden, silver snakes dance wildly and thunder roars. Seeing this, Zifa covered his forehead and sighed. I asked you to guard against the sneak attack from behind, but you don't care about the front? You. Hey. Ron is the Thunder Man. Fast speed, strong explosiveness, and huge lethality. Even if he didn't bring the 6 styles with him, the speed of the lightning was extremely terrifying. At this time, retreating straight back was the most irrational thing to do. Ron didn't even need to make a judgment. The speed of lightning in a straight line was enough to catch up with anyone and then severely injure them. Instead, Shizuo should use his observation haki to determine the range of his attack, and instead of defending, he should counterattack and break one of his arms at close range, leaving him with no room to use his advantages and forcing him to teleport away. Shizuo has control over his life return and has plenty of energy. As long as he can hold on to this wave of attacks and continue to delay, it is only a matter of time before Ron is defeated after the extreme overload. But now, in the explosion, Shizuo was hit on the head twice in a row. The dazed Shizuo heard Zifa's sigh and was suddenly speechless. Poof! Blood spurted out, and Shizuo, who could have continued fighting, suddenly tilted his head and lost consciousness. What's the point of explaining it? Continuing to fight would only delay victory, but with the anger in his heart gone, Shizuo simply admitted defeat. The smoke dissipated, and Ron, who was about to continue his attack, saw this scene and suddenly stopped, pointing at his nose. Wait, I won. Shizuo fainted, but he was still standing. Doesn't that mean he finally won? In 2 months, he and Shizuo fought 13 times. In the first 12 games, Ron was caught by Shizuo in 7 of them and fell to the ground with serious injuries. In the remaining 5 games, as he became stronger like a monster, Ron did not give his opponent any chance, and eventually lost due to lack of physical strength. I thought this one would be similar. Unexpectedly, I won. Yet. Congratulations, Ron! Zifa flashed forward, and after confirming Shizuo's injury, his mouth twitched. He kicked him away and clapped his hands. With the strength of 3000 Dao power, you defeated Shizuo, who possessed a dual-color domineering power of 4000 Dao power. I have to say, you are pretty good. I am so ashamed. It is all because of my teacher's good teaching. Ron, whose height had skyrocketed to 2.33 meters due to the development of his potential through the 6 forms, had a strange smile on his face. His tall and straight figure was covered with bruises, his eyes were narrowed to a slit, and his face was swollen like a bun, but he still stood firmly. I think you can let Instructor Shizuo go out to sea for some experience and continue to stay in the recruit camp. This guy is useless. Going out to sea for experience is something only new recruits need to do. Ron's evaluation undoubtedly meant that Shizuo was like a freshman, a fried ice cream that graduated 30 years ago, crispy on the outside, and tender on the inside. If Shizuo hadn't fainted after losing that breath, he would probably have jumped up in anger and fought with Ron. This was originally a joke, and Ron did not take it seriously, but he did not expect Zifa to raise his chin seriously after hearing it. That's right. Shizuo's temper has been stuck in the recruit camp for the past few years. It is indeed difficult for him. Tomorrow I will go to Zhangguo to discuss and let him reinstate his position. What are you doing? Snapped. Ron slapped himself on the face and muttered to himself, it's okay, I'm just hitting a mosquito. I'm not being a bitch. Without Shizuo, where can I find such a perfect opponent? Looking at the entire recruit camp, is he going to fight Zifa? This gap is too big. No matter how weak Zephyr is, he is still an admiral and is countless times stronger than Shizuo. In the face of absolute strength, he had no choice but to be beaten unilaterally. Where are the mosquitoes coming from in this cold weather? Zifa frowned and waved his hand to signal him not to speak. All right, you have completely learned how to shave and iron blocks, and the champion rewards end here. If you want to learn the rest, you have to exchange it for military merits, understand? Understand. That's good. Now come out with me, I have something for you to do. Okay. Ron, who was rubbing the bruises on his body, stopped and looked at Zephyr in confusion. A mission? I'm a new soldier. The new recruits do go out for internship, but that's usually in May or June. It's only March 15 now, so what tasks will be assigned to him? Chapter 36, Arrival of Science Corps Instruments. Marine Headquarters Marineford is a rare island on the Grand Line that changes with the seasons. Soldiers change into thick long-sleeved uniforms in winter. The patrol team saw two majestic figures walking towards them, and they couldn't help but stand at attention and salute with admiration. Chief Instructor Zifa. Mr. Ron. Ron was just a new recruit who had not even left the recruit camp and did not have any official title. But his strength had been recognized by all soldiers 2 months ago, and he was a legendary existence who continued the name of the three admiral monsters of the Navy. In this world where the strong are respected, saluting at this time is out of admiration and fear for the strong. With Zifa around, Ron didn't dare to be negligent. He stopped and raised his hand in return. In the past, when he met a patrol team, he would just raise his hand and say hello, but now Zephyr would definitely not allow him to ignore discipline. Before he could defeat Zephyr, Ron was very self-conscious. The two sides crossed each other, and watching the two people walk away, the patrol captain sighed and said, "Sometimes, you have to admit that the gap between people is really big. I have been in the Navy for more than 20 years, but now I am just a sergeant major. Chief Instructor Zifa can't even remember my name, and Ron is still a new recruit. Hey! Who can be blamed for this?" An old soldier familiar with the patrol team joked, "Who told you to pee your pants when you fought pirates for the first time? I heard that it was all thanks to your family connections that the commander didn't throw you out. For a soldier who graduated from the headquarters military academy, you really have a lot of face." "Nonsense, nonsense." The captain's face immediately turned red. "That's seawater, you know? It's seawater." After that, some incomprehensible words like "pirates are shit," "I assisted the commander in killing 3," etc. were heard, and the air was filled with a happy atmosphere. In this world that belongs to the strong, the happiness of ordinary people is limited to this. They don't have too many grand ambitions, just to live and live better. But this is the happiness that Ron doesn't want, and it is also the fundamental reason why he has been constantly challenging his limits. A life of mediocrity is like poison to him. Either die blazingly or live brilliantly. There is no third choice. Following Zifa, Ron walked all the way to the back of the fortress and stopped in front of a tall building. Looking at the sign erected in front of the gate, he scratched his head and asked curiously, "Teacher Zifa, why did you bring me to the Science Corps?" The white building in front of him was nothing else but the station of the Navy Science Corps at the headquarters. The Science Corps had several stations, in other words, several experimental bases, distributed in various corners of the sea, and they were extremely secretive. Except for Sengoku and the top leaders of the world government, no one knew the exact location. But the one located in the Marine Headquarters, Marineford, was undoubtedly the largest. You should know that Kizaru, one of the 3 admirals, has always lived here, instead of having another residence in the headquarters like Aokiji and Akainu. Ron had been kept in the dark for nearly 3 months, and the finished product had been delivered for a week. Zifa thought it was time for Ron to come over and take a look. Hearing this, he explained, "I handed over the information related to your lightning stimulation method. Vegapunk imitated it and created a batch of equipment that can be used for stimulation training, but the specific effect remains to be discussed. Before it is deployed to the troops on a large scale, the marshal asked you to come over to test it and give me some advice. Ron's eyes suddenly widened, with only one thought left in his head. Hold the grass. There was nothing to say about his lightning stimulation method being coveted by others. After all, everyone could see that Ron's rapid growth was all due to this lightning stimulation method. Since he dared to expose it in public on the Garp ship, he was sure that the Navy would take notice and wanted to use it to gain benefits. But I didn't expect it to happen 3 months ago. Zifa actually submitted the information 3 months ago. Now that I think about it, it was just the right time for him to accept me as his apprentice. Could it be that? Asterisk. Seeing Ron's increasingly speechless and resentful look, Zifa coughed dryly and blushed. He didn't want Ron to think he was an unscrupulous person who took his disciples' things for profit, so he immediately explained, "Don't worry, you will get some benefits. Compared to you having to negotiate with those 2 old foxes Zhangguo and he in the future, they won't dare to treat you unfairly if I come forward. This makes sense. The man is innocent. Even if they regarded Ron as one of their own, Sengoku, and he would be more willing to give Ron some military merits for the sake of the Navy. Even though Zifa has concealed the fact and reported it in advance, I won't suffer any loss with his words." Thinking of this, Ron couldn't help but feel touched. His master was really good, considering all aspects. He ignored their friendship for many years and even said old fox. But his lightning stimulation method is not a good thing. Although the effect is powerful and can quickly improve physical strength, the process is definitely not wonderful. This was obvious to all. Cap was still frightened by Ron's bloody and ferocious appearance every time he finished training in the first month, and he reminded him of this many times in the meeting. Even if the research and development is successful, this is definitely not something that can be produced on a large scale. That kind of pain and suffering can easily destroy a person's will and soul. Only those naval elites who have developed their potential to the limit, are stuck in their ways and are extremely resilient can attempt to use it. So Ron came back to his senses and did not point out Zifa's little idea. Instead, he frowned and asked, "Are you sure it's feasible? If something unexpected happens, it will be naked murder. Everyone knows their own business." The lightning stimulation method was derived from the self-mutilation training method that almost killed him, except that the means of causing pain was changed from instruments to lightning. If it weren't for his body's extraordinary self-healing ability, his life as tough as a cockroach, and the nutritious food in the one-piece world that is comparable to elixir, he wouldn't dare to use it himself. As a result, you have made an instrument based on the data alone, trying to imitate that process? No wonder some people say scientists are crazy. Because they don't consider the consequences at all. Murder, not so much as that. At this moment, a slow and lazy tone sounded from the side, and a golden light flashed in the air. It condensed into shape, and Kizaru wearing brown sunglasses appeared beside the two of them. Seeing him, Ron saluted honestly, "General Kizaru." "Hey, long time no see. Thunder brother." Kizaru was still so unremarkable, greeting him slowly and obscenely. Then he looked at Zephyr slowly and said, "I thought Zephyr had forgotten about this matter. After all, we had discussed it a week ago." In response, Zifa snorted coldly and did not give Kizaru a good look. "Humph. As the chief instructor of the new recruit camp, I'm very busy. It's normal that I don't have time." "Eh? Really? But I heard that you, Mr. Zifa, have been drinking tea in the office every day recently. You seem to be very relaxed, right? You only saw me drinking tea, Kizaru." "Oh, is that so? That's all right then." Sensing the faint fluctuations of armament haki on Zephyr's body, Kizaru stopped while he was ahead, then looked back at Ron who was watching from the sidelines, and said, "Ordinary soldiers definitely don't need to use them to activate their potential. This is for elite officers who have reached a bottleneck in their potential development. Don't underestimate their resilience, Ron. In order to become stronger, they can endure any pain. I hope so. As the developer of the lightning stimulation method and the genius who extended it to the overload form, Ron was not optimistic about the instrument. However, this also aroused his interest. He was sure that he had never come into contact with Vegapunk, and as a new recruit, he was not qualified at all. So if we completely ignore him as the developer and only rely on the data, what can Vegapunk, the legendary genius scientist who is 500 years ahead of the world, achieve? The science core is different from ordinary military camps. There are no sweaty soldiers here, only researchers in white coats walking hurriedly. The science core was not established after Vegapunk, but Vegapunk appeared hundreds of years after it was established. Before Vegapunk appeared, the Science Corps was responsible for the updating of Navy guns, ship construction, and other matters, in order to maintain the leading position of the Navy and suppress the sea, just like these researchers are doing. What is that? A machine gun that can fire bullets continuously. What about this? Inflatable sleeping bags help soldiers perform long missions on the island. Yellow Monkey is a competent commander. Along the way, Ron occasionally tinkered with the strange props he saw, such as new muskets, self-propelled grenades, and black technology that can emit hot melt rays and freeze rays. No matter what strange gadgets they are, he can tell you something about them. What about that? Seeing the direction Ron was pointing, Kizaru, who had his hands in his pockets, had a gleam in his eyes, a new type of cannon. In the open space over there was a silver-white object that looked more like a flintlock rifle than a cannon. It was over 3 meters long, and the front was not a muzzle, but 2 irregular metal strips. It was something that Vegapunk was developing, and it was the weapon that the pacifist had placed in his previous design. A new type of weapon, said to be more powerful than his own laser. However, the amount of electricity required for each launch is too terrifying. Even if he was a pacifist, his strong body, which was copied from the flesh of the tyrant bear, could not withstand 2 launches. As a last resort, Vegapunk replaced the pacifist's weapon with a laser launcher developed through bloodline factors. From the gadgets in the scientific core, it can be seen that the fruit abilities of the 3 admirals were all studied by Vegapunk. The reason why Kizaru was chosen in the end was that laser weapons were more suitable than melt rays and freeze rays in terms of both manufacturing difficulty and practical significance. It was precisely because of the need to cooperate with Vegapunk to perfect the pacifist that Kizaru became the commander of the Science Corps. And this abandoned new type of cannon was the reason why Kizaru went to watch the test on the first day Ron arrived at the Marine headquarters. Because after giving up the first version of the design, Punk said with great regret, "It would be great if there was a thunder fruit. Okay, these are all shapeless things, let's move faster." Kizaru withdrew his gaze, with no sign of anything unusual on his expression. "Take the elevator down from the building to the ground floor, where there is a separate port. A warship is docked inside, and staff are checking the equipment and installing sea stone patches on the warship. This technology is currently only mastered by the Navy, so there is no problem keeping it secret." After crossing the port, the 3 soon arrived at a large warehouse. In front of them, there were hundreds of instruments covered with white cloth. One of them was moved to the door alone. Several researchers were banging around and arranging it. Seeing Kizaru coming in, an old Mediterranean man in a white coat waved his hand. "General Kizaru. The equipment has been checked and is ready for use. Is this it?" Ron took a step forward and bent over to look at the white cylindrical object. It was made of high-strength ceramics, with a metal liner and a movable hatch on top for entry and exit. The internal electrode patches were neatly arranged at the positions of the left and right hands, and there was an insulating pedal below. If the pain could not be endured, one could step on it at any time to block the current. "This is your mission, Ron." Zifa also came over and said to Ron, "Test the similarities and differences between the stimulation effects produced by this machine and your lightning stimulation method. If you do well, the Marshal will allow you to learn an additional 6 styles." "6 style again?" The champion reward for the rookie camp's year-end evaluation only allowed him to learn 2 of the moves. Now, by doing a small favor, he could learn an extra move. Ron's eyes instantly lit up. Done. But at this moment, Kizaru said in a strange tone, "Be careful not to bite off more than you can chew, Ron. Have you learned the 6 styles that were taught to you before?" "Okay." Ron looked up and glanced at Zifa. "Of course. It can already be used in actual combat." "Hiss." Kizaru immediately gasped and said in surprise, "It can be used in actual combat in just 2 months? What a terrifying physical talent! It's such a waste of the thunder fruit." What do you mean, Kizaru?" Zifa's face darkened and he shouted. "When writing a novel, it is inevitable that you will encounter situations where it is difficult to satisfy everyone. Some people will say one thing, and naturally some will say another. Some people will even deliberately call a black cat a white cat in order to appear unique and satisfy their vanity. So, as an author, how should you judge truth and falsehood and collect information? Answer: as long as it is not a mistake of principle, just leave it alone. The internet is fake and free. What you care about may not be cared about by others at all. What you work hard for may be worthless in the eyes of others. You spend a lot of effort to revise the article, but you may only get a reply of "It's boring, I've given up reading it." So as long as it is not a mistake of principle, just leave it alone. Today, a book friend somehow found out Dashu's ID in World of Warcraft. We had a very happy chat at first. Then he talked about how to write chapters 1 by 1 from the 1st to the 30th chapter, such as letting the protagonist eat more fruits and so on. Finally, he said to me, "I can't write a novel with these ideas, so I'll write it for you. Do I still have to pay you copyright fees?" "Thank you." To be fair, he is a good man and expressed his views and suggestions, and Dashu expressed his gratitude. But the wording and sentence structure that "you must change because I told you so" is very disgusting. I don't admit that I have such non-mainstream book friends. It must be the small accounts of various forces that are messing with my mood. So I have to say a few more words here. As long as it is not a principled mistake, the big tree will not change, is too lazy to change, and has no interest in changing. Because your opinion alone is too pale and powerless. A 4,000-word chapter is here. Chapter 37: Kizaru's Little Thoughts. The scientific forces are stationed in an underground warehouse. After hearing what Kizaru said, Zifa frowned and shouted, "Kizaru, what do you mean? Don't be angry, Mr. Zephyr. I'm just worried that Ron, a natural ability user, will spend all his time on physical skills, which will do more harm than good." Kizaru yawned nonchalantly and said calmly, "As a lightning man, you have innate advantages in speed and destructive power that ordinary people can hardly achieve. It is better to strengthen your advantages than to develop them in a balanced way. When you develop the thunder fruit to its full potential, no one in this sea will be your opponent." This sentence was said to Ron, but Zifa felt a chill in his heart. Because he knows Ron too well. After 3 months of teaching, he knew very well Ron's desire for power. He didn't need power to do anything, he just enjoyed the pleasure of becoming stronger. And just as Kizaru said, compared with the balanced development of physical skills and fruit development, specializing in one path can bring more powerful power. It can even be said that this path was also planned in advance by Zifa for Ron. After all, he is a natural ability user. As long as physical skills do not fall behind and become a sore spot, it is enough. But Ron is still laying the foundation. Even if he is extremely talented, it takes time to understand strength, and this is the same for everyone. Now that this easier path to becoming stronger is directly in front of him, Ron's choice is clear. As expected, after hearing this, Ron nodded, "That's right. One trick is enough to conquer the world, and being proficient in one skill is not as good as being good at one skill." "Ron? You?" Zifa looked at Ron in shock, feeling inexplicably chilled. Was his disciple going to follow Kizaru's old path? In response, Kizaru's eyes lit up, pouted, and said obscenely, "Yes. Your talent is really amazing, Ron. You learned to shave an iron block in 2 months. I can't deny your talent in physical skills. But as a Thunder Man, you have more powerful power but you don't use it. Isn't this a bit putting the cart before the horse?" "Is that putting the cart before the horse?" Ron stroked his chin and thought carefully. Suddenly, he looked up at Kizaru and said, "General Kizaru, how should I develop my thunder fruit?" "This is it." Seeing Zephyr's greasy face, Kizaru felt very relieved and explained, "The destructive power of lightning and the application of electromagnetic force, both of these paths are worth developing. However, lightning has an inherent advantage in terms of lethality, so you don't have to worry about falling behind, so I recommend that you extend the application of electromagnetic force. This is the scientific force, you can come here and use scientific and technological means to strengthen this. If that doesn't work, there is also Vegapunk, who has made profound research on electromagnetic force. This is blatant poaching." As long as Ron nods, Kizaru will keep his word and will seriously help Ron develop the application of electromagnetic force. Not only can it make Ron stand on his side, but it can also make Zephyr angry to the point of doubting his life. There is no reason for Kizaru not to do so. Electromagnetic force? It's a good thing indeed. As one of the 4 fundamental forces in the universe, the future of electromagnetic force is even brighter than that of lightning. But I am a user of the natural thunder fruit, not a superhuman electromagnetic fruit. Using lightning to construct a magnetic field and directly controlling the magnetic field seem to have similar effects, but there is an extra step and less discretion. Although electromagnetics and electricity are inseparable, the starting point determines the end point. If you focus on electromagnetic applications, you are putting the cart before the horse. At most, we can develop some derivative applications of electromagnetic force. For example, the radio wave feedback he released when he defeated Shuzo for the first time. This ability, combined with the observation haki, can form a special type of mind network like Enel's that can monitor the entire Angel Island. That's right. Mind network equals observation haki, but Enel's mind network can monitor, and the range covers the entire Angel Island, so it is a special type, making the teleportation distance longer and launching ultra-long-range divine punishment attacks. Another example is using electromagnetic force to generate a magnetic field defense circle. Defense is secondary. Ron is interested in the electromagnetic defense circle, which can isolate the air, which is equivalent to carrying an oxygen tank in a toxic environment. Another example is avoiding seawater in seawater, maintaining freedom of movement, and avoiding the weakness of the devil fruit. That's all there is to it. If we continue, the consequences will outweigh the gains. And so, Kizaru, oh Kizaru, I'm afraid I'm going to disappoint you. Ron sneered inwardly, looking at the expectant eyes of the two, his face full of entanglement. It sounds good, but fist fighting is the romance of men. How about this? Ron's eyes sparkled. In the future, when developing the power of the fruit, I will borrow the instruments and data from the scientific core. Teacher Zifa will continue to trouble you with the physical skills, and try not to be biased in one subject. No matter what little thoughts you have, I just won't learn them. What can you do about it? Hearing this, Kizaru held his breath in his chest and was stunned for a long time. After a long time, he doubted his life and reminded, Ron, I mean you should focus on developing the ability of the fruit, and physical skills can be put aside. God, he is not biased in his studies. So I just said a lot of nonsense? But doesn't that leave a weakness? Ron answered confidently, completely ignoring the embarrassment and shame that flashed across Kizaru's face. He then clenched one hand into a fist and raised the other hand in front of his eyes, and when I develop both my physical skills and my fruit abilities to their full potential, and can stand on my own even if I'm pulled out alone, how strong will I be? Swish! Suddenly turning back, Ron looked at the two with shining eyes. By then, can we kill the 4 emperors? Zifa. Kizaru. Your goal is quite ambitious. Kill the 4 emperors? Garp could have done it decades ago. After all, he was the one who made rocks, the overlord of the New World, suffer and forced Roger, the Pirate King, into desperate situations several times. Interrupted by Ron's lofty ideals, the two looked up at the sky in silence. After a moment, Zifa's shoulders twitched and he laughed out loud, ha 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 ha. It's you, Ron. So that's it, so that's it. When Kizaru proposed an easier way to become stronger, Zephyr thought he was out of luck. Ron joined the navy just to become stronger, and he thought that Ron, who wanted to become stronger, would definitely choose the path proposed by Kizaru and give up physical training. But he forgot, or rather they all forgot, that Ron was not one of those who craved power. What he longed for was strength itself. Physical skills? Fruit ability? Sorry, in his eyes there is no need for choice at all. Because in his mind, both are just a means and a way for him to become stronger. He does not pray or desire them from the perspective of an inferior, but enjoys the process of conquering power, and wants to make power his slave and obey his orders. I have to say, this is the Ron that Zifa knows. A monster that exists only to become stronger. Huang Yuan also understood at this moment. A rare bitter smile appeared on his wretched old face. He shook his head and said, "What a greedy little devil." He didn't set a trap to harm Ron on purpose. As the most talented scientist in the world, Vegapunk had long stated that the power obtained by the user of the Thunder Fruit by developing electromagnetic force is no weaker than simple lightning, and at most it has a limited limit. This is the dominance of the 4 fundamental forces of the universe. Even if they are derived, their power is still unparalleled. And if Ron chooses to develop electromagnetic force, then with Vegapunk's words in mind, he will have plenty of opportunities to pull Ron into the research and development of pacifists, making Zephyr so angry that he will doubt his life. But all these little thoughts were interrupted at the source. Fruit? Physical skills? Why make a choice? I have to be all. Ron, who has talent, opportunity, resilience, and wisdom, has the capital to be greedy. Looking at Ron with shining eyes, Kizaru sighed and said to Zifa, "Times have changed, Mr. Zifa. In the past, we didn't have such ambitions as him. This is the truth, among the 3 admirals, except Kizaru, the other 2 are also biased. After all, if a natural ability user wants to become stronger, the best way is to develop the ability of the fruit. But Kizaru is too biased, and Zephyr can't correct it, and he is repeatedly at a disadvantage, which makes him very angry." Thinking back to the decades when he was in charge of the recruit camp, Zephyr rarely did not argue with Kizaru and sighed, "Times." In response, Ron gently raised the corner of his mouth. The plan goes through. Electrodes 1 to 10 are in place. Electrodes 10 to 15 are in place. Number 15. In a corner of the warehouse, Ron lay inside the instrument, letting the researchers stick electrodes on his body. While the researchers were setting them up, Zifa asked, "How does it feel? Can you give me a cushion? It's so uncomfortable lying flat." Ron pointed to the back of his head, and the flat, hard metal plate hurt him. In response, Zifa's face darkened, and he slammed the hatch shut. Through the glass of the hatch, Ron heard him shouting outside. "Use the maximum current for me. Make him feel comfortable. This is my real teacher." Ron's mouth twitched speechlessly, and he made an okay gesture to the researcher who was looking over. The next moment, the electric current in the cabin started to turn, and a tingling sensation quickly emerged. Sizzle! Outside the hatch, the dazzling lightning frightened everyone so much that they couldn't help but put on their sunglasses and stepped back 3 meters. The ordinary researchers swallowed hard, looking at the dashboard in shock and admiration. 10 million volts. As expected from Vegapunk. Such a powerful current was trapped in the narrow space of the instrument by a few simple iron plates without any leakage. If even a trace of it were released to the outside world, it would be enough to burn a person into charcoal in an instant. And what's more, is the guy picking his nose with lightning really a human? It seems to be effective, but it stops working when the Dao power reaches 2000. Well, this is consistent with the information provided by Vegapunk. After sensing it with his observation haki, Kizaru nodded silently. Ron's growth rate is obvious to all. He has completed in just half a year a journey that others would take a lifetime to complete. The 700 Dharmakaya 2 months ago has already reached 3000 at his terrifying growth rate. He eliminated Zifa in the recruit camp, second only to Shuzo. This is also the reason why the Navy attaches great importance to this batch of instruments. Even the 5 elders silently nodded their heads and approved the Navy's interference with the pacifists' development progress, which Ron did not know. Because as long as the instruments are effective, it goes without saying that the World Government's intelligence organization CP0-9 will definitely use them first. In the face of such a strong physique, an electric current of 10 million volts would have no effect even without the resistance bonus of the Lightning Man. Half an hour later, the current stopped. Ron climbed out of the instrument, stretched his muscles, and sighed heartily. Awesome! I really admire Vegapunk more and more. Without his knowledge, they created a finished product based on only a little information. Not only did it perfectly imitate his lightning stimulation method, but it also reduced the pain and gave the user a chance to breathe through the frequency of the current that he couldn't understand. I have to say, Vegapunk is really a genius. Chapter 38 was sold. That's good. Sit down, have a drink of water, talk about your feelings, and let them collect some information. Hearing this, Kizaru pointed at the researchers who were waiting on the side with shining eyes and said to Ron. With the help of Ron, the Lightning Man and founder, the researchers estimated that it would take a week or even several weeks to obtain all the data, but the test was completed in just one afternoon, with only some fragmentary evidence left. Ron also gave his own opinion. Except for the current intensity corresponding to a few Dao force values that needed to be adjusted, the rest was perfect. Of course, the most important thing was that the user's comfort in the internal space needed to be improved urgently. It would be best to add a pillow. This one was rejected by Zifa with his fist. Finally, when the two walked out of the scientific troop space, a group of scientific researchers were very friendly to Ron, patting their chests to assure him that they could come and practice with him anytime he needed. The instrument testing work was completed, and not only Ron was rewarded, but they also had corresponding credit. Moreover, they completed it several days ahead of schedule with guaranteed quality and quantity, so their credit was even greater. Now, although the lower-level soldiers still need to slowly build the foundation and develop their potential, most of the middle-level officers can get a leap forward in a short period of time. The future of the Navy will be even brighter. Walking out of the building and saying goodbye to Kizaru and others, Zephyr said with sincere emotion. In recent years, the Navy has not produced a new monster, and the gap is quite serious. Not only is Sengoku anxious, but Zephyr is also very uncomfortable. Smoker, who was optimistic about the past few years, is not only a thorn, but also his strength is not absolute, which makes the Navy's top brass disappointed. It's good now. Even if no real monsters appear, with the equipment developed by Vegapunk, the backbone of the Navy can also get an explosive growth. Many things that could not be done in the past due to manpower issues now have enough capital to do. Zifa is quite looking forward to the future. And on top of that, they have a real monster. The user of the Thunder Fruit, Ron. Not only is it the backbone force, but the future peak combat effectiveness is also guaranteed. Ron was also very happy at this time, silently pondering in his mind which of the 6 moves he should choose. Shaving and iron blocks are both very practical skills. Needless to say, with Zifa's speed, shaving in short-distance combat is faster and less labor-intensive than teleporting. The latter technique of accelerating blood flow to make the body as hard as steel can not only resist being beaten, but also cooperate with the lightning stimulation method to form a stronger training effect. Storm kicks? No, lightning can also do the cutting ability, so the settings overlap. The finger gun's lethality is far outweighed by lightning, so don't worry about it for now. As for moon steps, lightning people can fly after elementalization, but I can't control lightning's speed at the moment, so learning moon steps is a good supplementary choice. And paper drawing. My biggest problem now is that I'm too strong and not flexible enough. Walking on the path, one was thinking and the other was talking. The moonlight elongated their shadows, making them look so harmonious. But my brain circuits are completely on different frequency. It was not until they were about to enter the recruit camp that a figure appeared in front of them and made them stop. Ron glanced at the other person and suddenly felt a phantom pain in his head. He subconsciously took a half step back. Lieutenant General Garp. Ugh, useless. Zifa glared at Ron fiercely, then frowned and asked, "Is the time almost up?" "Hey? What do you mean?" Ron was confused and had no idea what they were talking about. In response, Cap glanced at him and grinned, revealing his big white teeth, like a beast ready to eat someone. "Go back to sleep, kid, don't interfere in adult matters." TCH. Who cares? Ron curled his lips in dissatisfaction, but he also knew that the Navy was not a pirate. It not only looked at strength, but also status. His current status was not high enough, so he was not qualified to know many things. He suddenly turned into a bolt of lightning, leaving a bright spot in the night, and disappeared at the end of the road in the blink of an eye. After Ron left, Zifa looked at Garp seriously and said, "Is the Marshal really that worried about Ron?" "Well, it's better to be safe than sorry." Garp sighed and shrugged self-deprecatingly. "You also know about Darug, don't you?" Seeing Zephyr frowning, knowing that he was very dissatisfied with this, Garp suppressed a smile and said, "Don't be so nervous, Zephyr. It's just a small test. Don't you know Ron's character? Have some confidence in him." "Hey, maybe." Thinking of what happened in the Science Corps today, Zifa pulled his collar with a strange look in his eyes. To be honest, he was not sure whether it was a good thing to let Ron become a Navy. The next morning, just after dawn, Ron ran to Zifa's office with great enthusiasm to collect his reward. He spent the whole night thinking about which 6 moves to choose, fearing that he would be regarded as giving up if he was too late. Boom boom boom. "Come in." After receiving the response, Ron pushed open the door and said excitedly, "Teacher Zifa, I'm here to see you, Vice Admiral Garp." In the office, besides Zifa, there was also Garp who appeared last night. At this time, the two looked solemn, which made Ron lower his voice involuntarily. "What happened?" "Oh, it's Ron." Zifa raised his head and said, "You are here to collect your reward, right?" After a few months, Zifa was very familiar with Ron. He knew what he was thinking by looking at the excitement on his face. Ron nodded blankly, That's right. I thought about it all night. Now I'm lacking in flexibility, so I want to learn paper painting." Although paper painting is not well known in the original work, far inferior to shaving and moon step, it can be listed as one of the 6 styles of the Navy. It is a combination of the strengths of hundreds of schools and naturally has its own unique features. This is not only a move to enhance perception and flexibility to avoid enemy attacks, but also a way for practitioners to fully understand their physical condition. To master the ultimate secret of life return, the need for control over the body is self-evident, and among them, the proportion of paper painting is very large. The only case is Rob Lucci's paper painting martial body, which changes the body shape, reduces consumption and strength, and focuses on enhancing agility. This is the wonderful use of paper painting combined with life return. A man should be able to bend and stretch, be soft and hard. Being too tough will only lead to breaking. This also applies to cultivation. Okay, I see. Zifa nodded and took out a form, then sign it. Still need to sign? There's no need to be so troublesome to get rewards for year-end reviews. Ron picked up the form with a puzzled look in his head and took a look. It was signed by Marshal Sengoku, and the clauses listed the reasons and process for Ron's right to learn the 6 styles of the Navy. At the bottom were the supporting materials and seals provided by the Science Corps, as well as the signatures of Zephyr and Kizaru. Now only he, the person concerned, had not signed. When did the Navy need this process? Ron didn't understand, but since Zifa asked him to sign, he just signed. He couldn't sell him to the Celestial Dragons as a slave, right? Under the nervous gaze of Zifa and Garp, Ron signed his name. Before he put down the pen, he suddenly found that the 2 old men were relieved. Not good. Sold. Before Ron could react, Cap suddenly burst out laughing. Want to learn paper painting? No problem. I'll teach you well in the next month. Ron, W.T.F. He looked at Zephyr in shock, but found that Zephyr didn't even look at him. Instead, he nodded and said, Vice Admiral Garp's attainments in the 6 styles of the Navy are unmatched. He is the strongest in hundreds of years. I feel relieved to have him teach you. Remember, Ron, don't slack off in your training. You still have a long way to go. Is this the point? Look into my eyes when you speak. You really sold me out, you bastard. Wait, there's something fishy about that signature. Ron came to his senses instantly and reached out to grab the form, but Garp was quick-witted and covered with armament haki, restrained Ron and dragged him out. Ha 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 ha. You can't escape. Come with me, Ron. Seeing Zifa put the form into his shirt, which was covered with thick armament haki, Ron dispersed the lightning in anger and hooked his fingers on the door frame. He wanted to struggle, but he couldn't resist Garp's strange strength. He tore the wooden strips apart and dragged him out. Do not. When Ron disappeared from his sight, Zifa sighed, took out a form from his arms and crumpled it twice, and one piece of paper suddenly turned into 2. The one above was indeed the instruction manual for Ron to learn the 6 styles of the Navy. It roughly meant helping the Navy complete the lightning stimulation device in exchange for merit. Zifa was responsible for teaching him and made sure he fulfilled his promise. The one below was the necessary process for Ron to officially join the Navy, a recruit file that would take effect 2 months later. Hey! Why would an affiliated country jump out and cause trouble when even the 5 elders have acquiesced to it? I'm doing this for your own good, Ron. Sitting in the top-floor office, Zephyr looked out at the distant port, where Garp's doghead warship had been waiting for a long time, ready to set off at any time. Chapter 39 Set off for Hwachu. It was a winter day, and the sky was just getting light. Even in the Navy headquarters, there were not many people to be seen. Most of the soldiers had just gotten up, washed up, and were preparing for routine training. Being carried on Garp's shoulders, Ron struggled hard, but found that Garp's hands were like steel and did not move. The strong armament haki made it impossible for him to elementally transform and withdraw, so he could only let Garp carry him. What's even more insane is that Garp pushed and retracted his feet, unexpectedly taking the moon step, moving directly forward through the air and avoiding the winding road. Where exactly are you taking me? Ron shouted as the wind howled. Don't worry. We're already there. Okay. Ron looked up and saw that in just a dozen seconds, they had crossed the wide square in front of the fortress and arrived at the port in front of the fortress. On the shore of the bay port, Tryon had been waiting for a long time. After noticing the two, he waved with a smile. Long time no see, Ron. How have you been lately? Bang! Ron felt his stomach churning when Cap dropped him from his shoulders. So in response to Tryon's question, he twitched the corners of his mouth, covered his stomach and said, Major General Tryon, are you sure you can't tell whether I'm doing well or not? Tryon. Well, seeing that you still have the energy to argue with others, I know you are good. If you are okay, then get on board. Ron was stunned. Now? Going out to sea early in the morning in the middle of winter? Stop talking nonsense and get on top of it. Boom. Cap brushed off the wrinkles of his cloak on his shoulders and kicked Ron, who was caught off guard, more than 10 meters high and fell on the deck. Then he and Tryon moonwalked back to the deck and gave orders directly. Everyone get ready and go. Beep. The whistle blew and the engine started. Lying on the deck in a daze, Ron felt the sound of the war beast leaving the port, and he felt unwell. Is he really going out to sea? What's the reason? What am I here for? Wait a minute, I'm a little confused, let me sort it out. Ron got up and sat cross-legged, talking to himself. I didn't sleep all night. The first thing I did after I got up was to ask Mr. Zifa about the 6 styles of the Navy. Then I ran into that old bastard. After the teacher asked me to sign, the old bastard took me on board. Now the old bastard's ship has set sail. Ron kept calling him old bastard, and Cap's face turned pale. But before he hit anyone, Ron asked first, so? What am I here for? Your mission has nothing to do with me. Ron stared at Cap with a confused look on his face. Humph. I must have a reason for calling you here. You just need to obey orders, understand? Garp was serious for once, his eyes were intimidating without even being angry. Ron frowned slightly at this, and recalled the way Garp traveled by moonwalking, and soon became thoughtful. I see. I avoided the patrol? I guess no one except the people on this ship and Mr. Zephyr knows where I went. So it was a secret mission. Ron quickly understood and rubbed his chin silently. Since we are here, we should just make the best of it. After all, if we fight, we will definitely lose. And if it's a mission, then the reward or something. So, Ron raised a faint smile, stood up, saluted, and answered loudly. Understood. Vice Admiral Garp. Hiss, this little bastard has a really good brain. Seeing Ron's clear eyes, Cap was willing to bet his 10-day supply of donuts. Ron must have guessed something. But he didn't say it, but continued to act according to his performance. Because he knew very well that there was something he didn't know and needed to be kept secret for the time being. Comparing himself with Ron, Garp thought of his dull and stupid grandson Luffy, and Dragon who had rebelled and whose whereabouts were unknown, and he sighed secretly. They are all other people's children. The blue sea was vast and boundless. A huge warship raised its sails, rolled up its white dragon, cut the blue paper-like sea apart, and sailed forward through the waves. Seagulls circled over the warship, screaming at each other, waiting for the opportunity to snatch the bread, that was the soldiers' lunch. These little guys may look pure and innocent, but they are actually unscrupulous bandits. Just like the sea before our eyes, beauty is only appearance and danger is the essence. A few minutes later. Bang! The huge waves were deafening. Even the gigantic war beast was uneasy in front of the sea. The might of nature was truly terrifying. The weather on the Grand Line is so weird. It was sunny a few minutes ago, and dark clouds covered a few minutes later. Some people compare it to a girl in her prime, with changeable moods. Ron thinks, this guy is a psychopath. The soldiers immediately ignored their meals and, under the command of their respective captains, they folded the sails and tied up the supplies. They were all wet, whether from seawater or sweat. There is no such thing as laziness on a Cap ship. Ron's task was to clean the deck, but given the situation today, he didn't have to worry about it. Leisurely watching the soldiers busy on the deck, Ron's body lit up with a layer of light blue light, and he sat down to eat peacefully. In addition to studying paper painting with Funa this month, Ron also took to heart Kizaru's words development and extension of electromagnetic force. He was not a scientist and did not understand electricity and magnetism, but electromagnetism was inseparable. As a Thunder Man, he was gifted with many means to understand it. This electromagnetic barrier was his initial use of electromagnetic force. The biggest food in the world. Relying on the electromagnetic defense field to block the rain, Ron ate quickly. Moo. Along with the rainstorm came the terrifying sea beasts that ordinary people saw. The churning sea water made them dizzy. A dark brown manatee with a ferocious bull head rushed out of the water to breathe and immediately spotted the warship floating in the wind and rain. Wow! This beast, which was over 100 meters in size, had eyes as big as a house. It was only slightly smaller than the war beast, and the sea water it brought up was overwhelming. Caught off guard, tons of waves came and broke the defense circle around Ron that was set up to resist the rain. Hold the grass! Ron, biting half a piece of bread in his mouth, was knocked down by the waves and looked at the food that had turned into a paste in front of him. He felt sick. The last time he went to the cafeteria to search the cabinets because he was not full, he was beaten half to death by Garp, and this time, he didn't eat at all. Ron's eyes instantly turned red. Line up! Get ready to fire! 3, 2. Major General Tryon drew his weapon and shouted in the wind and rain. The next moment, Ron jumped up. It's mine! With his eyes piercing red, Ron held the lightning in his hand and moved from the deck to the top of the sea beast in the blink of an eye. Seeing this, Tryon's mouth twitched, and he couldn't say the one on his lips. To the war beast, this sea beast that was powerful enough to overturn merchant ships and kill people was just a small scene. Not to mention Garp, even he had no interest in taking action. This was a good opportunity to train troops. But now Ron took action, and the result was the same as theirs. Seeing Ron appear above the sea beast with thunder, the soldiers looked up and swallowed their saliva. It's Ron the errand boy. Great! With him helping us, there will be no problem. Come on Ron! Kill it! The soldiers trusted Ron very much, and he was now quite famous in the navy. In the cabin, through the window, Cap looked at the thunderbolt flashing through the gloomy rain curtain, smiled and shook his head. This little guy! The Minotaur was very confused as to how this human appeared above its head. Ron's exaggerated speed made it stare with its eyes wide open, with a stupid expression. But soon it opened its mouth wide, wanting to swallow Ron into its stomach. However, before that, Ron had already taken action. He clenched his fists, a murderous look on his face, his muscles bulging and knotting as he gathered strength in his fists. Give me, die! Boom! Crack, snap! A loud noise like the collapse of the sky resounded across the sea. As the soldiers watched in horror, the eyes of the bull-headed sea beast burst out of its head, pulling out a long stream of blood that fell into the sea on the other side of the warship. The head, which was originally a little small on its round body, shrank directly into its neck, like a deflated ball. Without any screams, the sea beast that appeared with the howling of wind and rain had its head knocked into its stomach by Ron's fist, and it could not be deader. Wow! Large amounts of blood were spilled, and the thick blood curtain was even larger than a rainstorm. The scene was terrifying. Tryon knew that Ron hated trouble the most. Now the deck was stinking, and he was the one to clean up the mess. There must be some deeper purpose for him to give up lightning and kill the sea beast with violence. E.G. Boom! Flipping over and landing on the deck, his body wrapped in lightning, Ron's face was grim, and he asked, "Can this sea beast be eaten?" There was a ruckus. The soldiers covered in blood were terrified, but when they heard these words, they collapsed. He's scared of being beaten. Tryon glanced around the cabin, paused for a second at a window where a sturdy black figure was faintly visible, smiled bitterly, and then ordered, "Stop talking nonsense. Clean up the deck. We'll be arriving at the Flower City soon." Chapter 40. There is something fishy about the parade. The Flower City is the famous name of Wester Island. Because the four seasons coexist on the island and the altitudes vary from region to region, countless flowers and exotic plants can be found here, so it is called the Flower City by the world. The capital of flowers. As one of the member states of the world government and the designated supplier of decorative flowers for the celestial dragons, the Flower City has been peaceful for a long time, with its people living and working in peace and contentment. It is a rare peaceful island in the Great Pirate Era. Ordinary pirates simply don't dare to cause trouble on this island, not even those arrogant supernovas. Because they knew very well that if they made trouble here, they would be searched by both the Navy and the world government's secret service, and there would be no place to hide in the sea. Even if they escaped back to the four seas, the Navy would rush over and execute them on the spot. There is only one reason. The flowers here are the offerings designated by the Tianlong people. It may seem silly to make such a fuss just for the flowers that the celestial dragons like, but it is not uncommon. The place where the warship landed is the summer area in the four-season area of Wester Island. Here, the grass is fresh, the flowers are red and the willows are green, and the fragrance of nature floats in the air. The outer walls of the port buildings are covered with lush creepers. Looking around, the green and gorgeous plants blend into the city and coexist harmoniously. Huaju, the capital of flowers, seeing is believing. Pft! The thick steel anchor was lowered by the winch, splashing white waves on the water surface. Along with the sound of the mechanism stirring, the deck at the guardrail began to deform, forming a wooden ladder, slowly extending to the moss-covered stone steps in the harbor. Boom! The soldier operated the disc, locked it, and saluted to Garp. "Lieutenant General Garp, the stairs have been installed." "Well, notify everyone, to line up." "Yes." The soldiers moved one after another, straightened their backs, raised their muskets to shoulder level, lined up in 2 rows, and marched in unison along the stairs, one on the left and one on the right. As a member of the world government and the designated flower supplier of the celestial dragons, Flower City has a high status in the sea. When a naval warship under the world government docks, no matter what its status is, it still has to show proper etiquette. Today, Cap rarely put down the donuts that he never let go of. He was dressed neatly, and the banner of justice behind him was spotless, making him look like an old man going on a blind date. Just as he was about to walk down the stairs, Carp suddenly turned around and called out, "Ron, come over here and stand on my right." "I." In the ranks of the miscellaneous soldiers, Ron pointed at his nose and looked around, and found that everyone around him was looking at him with all kinds of envy, jealousy, and admiration. The errand soldiers were not qualified to be the first to disembark, not to mention that the one who came to greet Garp was the Queen of Flora, the true pinnacle of power. Being able to disembark with Garp represented Garp's trust and optimism for him, and a meteoric rise to fame was just around the corner. Moreover, the location designated by Garp was on the right side, which was watched by countless chosen ones. All the soldiers of the Navy headquarters knew that ever since Garp defeated Rox and became the world-famous Navy hero more than 30 years ago, only one person has ever stood on his right-hand side in serious occasions like this. That is the current Admiral of the Navy, Aokiji Kyuzan. Maybe there is another one. Smoker, one of the new Navy men who was sent to Rogtown in the East China Sea to serve as a goalkeeper last year, the user of the natural smoke fruit, was said to have also been standing on the right side at that time. But that time was just in the East China Sea, meeting with a local national leader, and visiting friends, bringing Smoker with him. Compared with the Flower City of the Grand Line, the difference is huge. Even the adjutant, Major General Trian, who had mastered the two-color domineering and was proficient in the 6 styles and swordsmanship, was only standing on the left-hand position at this moment. It was self-evident that Garp valued Ron so much for being able to receive this honor. For a moment, countless soldiers couldn't help but hold their breath and looked up to Ron. "Vice Admiral Garp, isn't this a little too early?" Trian was not jealous of Ron. He had already seen through the word talent when he reached his position. But Ron was just a errand boy and his strength was far from perfect. It was a little inappropriate to put him on the right side. It's okay. I believe in the thundering devil. Well, if you insist. Tryon stopped and saluted Ron like the other soldiers. As a time traveler, Ron was not aware of the details. He simply thought that Cap was optimistic about him and wanted him to make some name for himself in the outside world. Bringing the promising juniors around and introducing them to other bigwigs was a common way of taking care of others in any world. Since he had decided to join the Navy, even if it was just to become stronger, the connections and reputation on the sea were of great importance. Garp was able to do this, and Ron walked out of the queue and walked over with firm steps. Regardless of what the upper government is like, this atmosphere and these people are pretty good. However, he did not hold back and smiled. Is this really okay, Vice Admiral Garp? I'm just a errand boy. Garp glared and said, why are you talking so much nonsense? I'll give you 1 second. Swish. Tsitsizi. As soon as the words fell, thunder flashed. A dozen meters away, next to Cap, Ron's mouth twitched and he appeared in human form. Suddenly, he laughed evilly and whispered. I bet 5 Baileys that you wouldn't dare to hit me now. Because of their position, the crowd below was clearly visible. In addition to the royal high-ranking officials who came to greet them according to etiquette, there were also countless onlookers who came to see the glory of the naval heroes. Hey, kid! Cap immediately became angry. Tryon's eyes twitched wildly and he coughed dryly. Lieutenant General, it's time to set off. Seeing the white knuckles of his fingers pressing on the hilt of the sword, if the two continued to make trouble, he was ready to be held accountable and sent to a military court, but he would definitely draw his sword and chop them down. Not knowing what he was thinking of, Cap snorted, ignored Ron, strode forward, and stepped onto the stairs first. Everyone, salute! Accompanied by a full-bodied roar, the soldiers raised their right hands in unison and placed them in front of their foreheads. There was no clattering rhythm, only a muffled dong sound, and hundreds of soldiers who had been standing calmly just now raised their right hands at the same time, without any difference in color. The scene was shocking. Standing in formation and saluting is not only a way to show respect to the allied countries, but also a way for the Navy to show the people that it is strong and disciplined, so that the people can feel at ease since the Great Pirate era. For a moment, countless people exclaimed in admiration and had a new understanding of the imposing Navy. Is this the soldier from the Marine headquarters? Sure enough, he is different from the branch soldiers. That's Vice Admiral Garp, the hero who captured the pirate King Roger. Mom, I want to be a general when I grow up. Hee, then you have to eat well and be strong to be a Navy officer. Under the adoring gaze of the people, the three, led by Garp, came to the Queen of Flower City who was lined up at the port. Welcome everyone to the Flower City. The Queen nodded slightly, with just the right smile on her face, not excessive or artificial, but warm and sincere. Swish! The other two saluted silently. Fortunately, as the user of the Thunder Fruit, Ron's reaction speed was enhanced, otherwise he would have made a fool of himself. What? Ron withdrew his hand with cold sweat on his forehead, and suddenly noticed that Cap looked a little strange. He didn't dare to look directly at the Queen of Flower City. He held his head back and managed to say something after a long time, well, long time no see, Rosa. The Queen of Flower City is not young, almost the same age as Garp. Although she is good at maintaining herself and still has her charm, the frown on her face betrays her without hesitation. She wore a gorgeous long dress decorated with green leaves and roses, and a golden laurel crown with an emerald the size of an eyeball in the middle. She exuded a lazy, noble, and mature temperament that only a queen could have. When she was young, she must have been a beauty that attracted thousands of young men. Seeing Garp's look, the Queen of Flower City, known as Rosa, curled her lips and raised her right hand covered with gauze towards him as if in a businesslike manner, asking him to kiss her hand. It's been a long time, Vice Admiral Garp. Queen Rosa said slowly, if it weren't for the grand banquet for my 70th birthday, I would have died of old age without ever seeing you, Lord Garp, for the last time. Caca. Under Ron's subtle gaze, the carefree and heartless Cap, who had just bent down, suddenly stiffened at a speed visible to the naked eye. The hardness of his muscles. Ron estimated that even a knife couldn't stab into him now. There is adultery. There is an affair. The fire of gossip burned in Ron's eyes. Dragon's mother, Luffy's mother-in-law, Garp's wife, this is the eternal problem that has troubled countless One Piece fans. Is the answer going to be revealed here? Say a few more words, Your Majesty, and reveal the old bastard's dark history. End of this chapter. Like and subscribe for more videos like this.